2, consideration of adopting resolution 141480, certifying the election results from the June 3rd election. Greg, have you anything to say, or is it just apparent what
we have a documentation of certification. It's in the packages. So I don't have anything to add to that. But just before we move on to the next steps, the whole process, I do want to take this opportunity to just thank the whole current existing board for all the hard work and the support and just everything that's been accomplished over the short time that I've been here. So I greatly appreciate it. My work is only as good as the board and the staff, and I'm really pleased to have been able to work with this group. So
thank you.
That's
thank
my
you.
statement.
Thank you.
I would love to move that.
Right. Do we need the opportunity for public comment on this item? We do. Okay. Well, I'll bring it to the board. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll take it out to the public. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
So I would move that we adopt resolution number 14-1480, certifying results of the June 3rd election.
Thank you.
Second.
Sullivan Wasco, the last ever.
It's a roll call vote.
And it's a roll call vote. All right.
Director Mays, how do you vote? Aye. Sullivan?
Aye.
Watsko?
Aye.
Aker?
Aye.
Silla?
Aye. All right, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda item number 3, swearing in new board members, Pam Meggs, Tom Gaffney, and Michael Borstein. Discussion or taking it out to the public? It doesn't seem...
No. You can just swear them in. I think. Unless the public has comment, but you should swear them in.
We vacate our seats
Okay,
yet?
so what we have are the formal certificates, and there is an original that will be signed by Director Silla as well as the electeds, and they will receive them. And then there are copies that also need original signatures that will be kept at the office and filed with the county. So they just need to recite the oath of office and below, and they can either do it individually or you can do it all together and they just state their name in the right place.
Which would you prefer? Individually or?
We did as a group last time.
Honestly, I don't recall. It was one of those,
We did it as
childbirth moments, like you're moving out of the And am I doing the swearing in?
Yes.
It's, the staff report is written so that it's general manager or designee, so he could designate you.
Would I go ahead?
I would like to.
Okay.
I don't remember.
I childbirth moments.
We had a big deal. No.
Very good.
July 2012 was an ordeal.
Hopefully we'll generally get this correct, so I just repeat after me. Okay.
Sentence by sentence.
Okay, so I will go ahead and conduct the swearing in for the oath of office for the 3 new board members. So I
State your name.
Thomas Gaffney.
Michael Borstein.
Pamela Meggs.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And the Constitution of the State of
California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
So now we will take a 5-minute recess to recognize and thank the outgoing board members and welcome the incoming board members.
And partakers.
We have some snacks. Great, are we
As
ready
it
to
should
bring
be.
it back at 6:23? Thank you. Roll call of the new board. Am I able to just say, everybody's here, or do we need an official roll call? Shall we have an official roll call?
Yeah, I do official roll call to be reflected in the minutes for posterity.
Okay. Director Meigs? Here. Director Gaffney?
Here.
Director Borstein?
Here.
Director Eger?
Here.
Director Stella?
Here. Thank you. That is item number 4. On to item number 5, approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any comments on the agenda?
We pulled the consent on the consent item, right?
We'll get to consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would move approval of the agenda as distributed in the packet.
Should I take it out to the public for comment? Is there any public comment on the agenda?
But don't we need to go out to the public if they have any items they want to discuss that are not on the agenda prior to this?
It's number 7.
Oh, sorry.
But anybody, you can just ask if anyone in the public wants to add or move something on the agenda.
Any public comment on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion, and then we'll Frank, you.
I move.
Okay.
All second.
Edward Gaffney, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 6, appointment of board officers, representatives, and committees for fiscal year 2014. Basically, everything in terms of appointments on this board changes tonight, and potentially, adding our new members. I have a friend who says, I like all my change at once. And so we are doing all of our change at once. And there is in the board packet a list of all of the positions.
Where, is that in the item 6?
And so, unless Greg or Jolie has any direction for me, I would just say, I guess we just begin discussion about board positions, and then do we take them one at a time?
Yeah, usually someone will nominate a person. You can just go through the president, secretary, and then someone can do a nomination, you can have discussion, or you can have discussion and then a nomination. But it's really up to the board.
And we take public comment on correct? Okay. So is there a discussion or board comment on the offices in general? I guess I would begin with the president, which is not.
Well, let's just take it down one at a time, I guess. If we're talking about president, if it's over, I would so move that we would appoint Pam Meigs as president for the next year, since we cut us now a new policy of 1-year terms for president.
All right, so there's a motion for Pam Meigs to serve as president. Do I have a second?
I guess I'll second that.
Okay. Edgar Meigs. So we take a vote on that. We
Or
don't.
open it to public comment or a discussion, you can discuss it. The one thing I did want to clarify, and from what I understand, from when we had a board president, it was a 1-year term, not consecutive terms. So I don't think, it's my understanding, there isn't a prohibition from serving more than 1 year, not just consecutive years. So I just wanted to clarify for the new board members and the public that anyone that has previously served as president can come back, I think, after sitting out a term. But we don't really have that in a policy, but I think that's been the practice. But
I think Pam's, when you've been 4 years this year?
Right.
4 years, and you haven't served as president.
No, I guess treasurer and secretary. I also have done some leadership work right after I came on board. I contacted the city of Larkspur, the city of Sausalito, and did leadership there, and liaison work because of the problems of the community not trusting this board. Created that right off the bat. I've done some other leadership, bringing in the North Bay Watershed Association, various committees, financial committee for 2 years. So I think it's my turn. I know the place by now.
All right, is there other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote, and I'd like a roll call vote on this, please.
Okay. Director Silla, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Director Mays? Aye. Director Gaffney?
No.
Director Borstein?
No, not at this time.
Director Eger?
Aye.
Okay, the motion fails on a 3-2 vote. I will entertain another motion for appointment of the president.
I make a motion to Director Gaffney as chair. I think he has a lot of background in community involvement. He has been in the community a long time. He shows leadership. He got the second highest votes. I got the first highest votes. So I think it'd be good to have a change.
I would like to second that.
Okay, is there a public discussion of that? I have a motion, Megs Borstein, for Tom Gaffney. Seeing no further discussion, we'll take a vote. Another roll call, please.
Director Silla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Mays, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Gaffney?
Aye.
Director Borstein?
Yes.
Director Eger?
Aye.
Thank you. We have unanimous vote for Tom Gaffney for president. And now you take over.
Well, thank you very much, I guess.
Do you want to sit in the room? I want you.
Oh, yeah, whether I sit Well, I accept this offer. I'm a brand new board member, but I have had lots of experience with wastewater, and I'm definitely needing the help of my fellow board members, and I appreciate the votes, the comments, and I really believe that we've got a good working board now. I believe we've got a good chance to change the perception of this district and become a sewer replacement gang, and get ourselves away from being in the newspaper natively. So that's my whole aim is to do what we're supposed to do, not waste a lot of time and money. Okay, so we have the next office, and it's secretary. And we could also nominate more than one at one time, could we, or is?
You can do a secretary, and then we've had alternates before, but we haven't had them voted on. I think we had.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
We both have voted on alternates.
Well, Director Miggs is the secretary now, and I'm looking for nominations for.
Can I ask just a quick question, not having done this for more than about 20 minutes now? When we discuss each position, can we discuss what the responsibilities very quickly of that position are?
Okay, I'll tell you, I've been secretary a year or 2 years, I forgot. It's really so minor, there's no meetings, you sign off sometimes documents. I signed all the bonds for the restructuring debt. When the
Ordinances, you are the attesting signature?
right, and we're bonded for this role, so you're protected against signing. But you have to be accessible once in a great while but you can always have an alternate as a backup. So it's very, very minimal.
Okay, so we have nominations for secretary.
Is anyone interested in?
I'll do it again if nobody wants it, it's really mine.
It doesn't sound like overwhelming and something that a first-time person could do. So I would say I could certainly do that.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, it's been, who firsted it?
Oh.
Okay, Frank moved it.
You don't, okay.
Let's see, board members, any comments? And out to the audience, any comments? So we'll go back to the board. Roll call.
Director Silla,
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Gaffney,
Aye.
Director Borstein,
Yes.
Director Eger.
Aye.
Okay, the next office is treasurer, and let's see, I guess Dr. Sullivan was treasurer before. What are the main duties of the treasurer?
Well, similar, but focused on the financials. Wendy, you want to elaborate a little bit as far as typical signature authorities and so forth, or?
The treasurer does act as one of the signers on our checking account. We do have staff signers, so they are now no longer called upon very often, but they are a check signer. They could be asked to sign financial instruments, but mostly that's president and secretary. Dr. Sullivan served on the finance committee, but that's not necessarily a must or a have to.
Who would like to be treasurer?
I'd be happy to do it. I would exist in your shadow as a, as you have much more background in sewage finance.
I move
but-
Silla.
Thank you.
I'll second.
You were first.
Okay. Comments from the audience? Move this along. Comments from the board? Roll call.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Gaffney,
Aye.
Director Borstein,
Aye.
Director Eger,
Aye.
Director Silla,
Aye.
Okay, alternate secretary. Let's see, who was, who would do it?
Are the two alternates on these two positions really necessary?
Well, it's like if I wasn't around to sign those bonds, somebody had to be available. And so that, am I right, Greg?
Yeah,
I don't-
I
yeah.
think, I remember this issue, the concerns, potential concerns. I will defer to Jolie or others as to whether or not this is optional, but I do understand, or at least from your earlier concerns, Frank, that many months ago when we had some activity that related to these roles. It is very seldom that we need the alternate. It's a standard practice to appoint it, but I think given the last couple of years of history of the district, there was concern expressed basically about how distributed and so on. Do you want to have signature authorities? What's the appropriate balance? At least that's how I understood the concern. So I guess my only feedback or direction I can provide to the board is that I understand it to be standard practice. It's meant to provide backup if you don't have that other person. But as we have noted in the past discussions outside of the board on this, it's a very infrequent need. So that's kind of my understanding. It's not a critical role, and I really don't have a good sense if it's an alternative to have that or not.
Well, one thing that would make it clear is because sometimes we have had certain matters that need to be signed and the person is unavailable, and so we've had to have, instead of the board president sign, maybe the board secretary. This will make it very clear that, let's say the secretary is out of town and can't sign a document, and the document needs to be signed before he or she returns. We have taken formal board action for the alternate, so if anyone wanted to come back and say, is this a valid instrument, we have the minutes, we have the board appointed a secretary and an alternate, so
I'll do alternate secretary.
Yeah.
That's clear. We need a motion.
I would motion
Uh,
Director Hager is the alternate secretary.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments? Bring it back to the board. Do we need roll call for all these, do you think?
Yeah, I would, I mean, just make
Let's
it
do a
very
roll call.
official.
Director Sella, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Meigs?
Aye.
Director Gaffney?
Aye.
Director Borstein?
Yes.
Director Eger?
Aye.
Okay. Alternate secretary. So we have one, two, three, four.
Treasurer.
Treasurer now.
Alternate treasurer, yeah, excuse me. Everybody has at least one job. Who doesn't have a job?
I mean, if somebody,
Pam. I know.
Pam.
It's fine.
Okay, alternate treasurer, Pam?
Yes.
Okay.
Put a motion.
I so move, need a
Pam
second.
Meigs.
I'll second.
Did you? Okay. Comments? None. Back to the board. Roll call vote.
Director Sella?
Aye.
Director Meigs?
Aye.
Director Gaffney?
Aye.
Director Borstein?
Aye.
Director Eger?
Aye.
Okay, the CMSA commissioner, this is a very important office position for us. And, you know, I think the last couple of years, our relationships on the board have been very good at Central Marin, and it's key for us, in fact, to improve if we can. So this one we can appoint, so we can just do it by. Frank, would you like to serve again?
Well, I would. I've served 2 years now. We've got we've got a couple of good programs going with water reuse, reclamation. We're working with MMWD. So I kind of started that off, and I'd like to continue that.
Is that okay with the board?
I should have a motion then, please.
Did anyone have any questions about the overall activity involved?
I went the other night and saw it.
Okay, very good. So, okay, excellent.
It's one Tuesday a month for Frank?
One Tuesday,
One
right.
Tuesday a month.
It's the second Tuesday of the month.
Okay. We have a motion for,
I motion that Frank continue.
a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion out there? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 5-0. Frank, you're in. The next position, also very important.
So we have Pat Glasgow's vacancy.
For Pat Glasgow's
I
vacancy.
believe it's for 1 year, correct?
Right.
It's 1 year.
This one is
Well,
1
we're
year.
letting
Yes,
Frank do it for another year, so.
Oh, see, the CMSA appointments are for 2 years.
Well, the 2 years, what is it?
Yeah.
They are 2 years, and Frank was at the end of his 2 years, so now he's been appointed for another 2 years to fill Pat Glasgow's. Was only 1 year into his 2 years, so this appointee would serve for 1 year.
This is
It's
for
a good
1
way
year.
to test it out.
I'd like
Yeah,
to.
I'm really interested in, I've been the alternate, so I have been to a few meetings. I'm also on the finance committee for CMSA. So I'd like to try it out for 1 year and develop some relationships there.
I'd also move Meigs for, to fill Glasgow's seat on CMSA.
I'll second it. Any comments out there? The audience, okay, back to the board. Any comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. You're in. The alternates, the 3 of us are alternates then. That's good. CSRMA board, now that's the
Let's have a motion making all 3 remaining board members the alternates, so it's on the record.
Okay.
So I would so move that the 3 alternates would be Mary Silla, Tom Gaffney, and Michael Borstein.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, CSRMA board, now that's the insurance board, right?
Yeah, I'll, go ahead.
Oh, no, I
Yeah,
was just
well,
saying,
It's now, well, I think
Is that
there's,
a meeting?
I can give it up. I don't, there's like a regional meeting, I think,
Well,
that
there-
happens.
Yeah,
But it's
there's
really-
actually, I'll just add a little bit, so the California Sanitary Risk Management Agency, Authority, thank you, that's probably 50/50 on that one. So very important relationship, business relationship with the district, key role in, a lot of our insurance practices, and really what I'll broadly call our risk management program. So that is there's a number of different parties that end up having roles in there. There's the underwriter, or not the underwriter, but the actual insurance companies. The board does meet regularly as part of the CASA, conference cycle, and it's one of the first activities that usually takes place on CASA. So I think my main point really is that in terms of overall risk management and insurance activities for the district, which is a very important business function, the CSRMA role is quite important. It's somewhat out of sight for 90% of the time for the board because they're very good about taking care of business before it ever gets to the board level. But I would that's just background for your consideration and what that job or what that role would involve.
Sounds like more technical.
It's not, again, it's not, I don't want to imply it's a heavy workload or anything, but it is.
You get an email once a month, and really I feel guilty. I mean, I don't even know if we went to the meetings, what our role would be there, but other than to listen to see
Well,
what's going on.
is every sanitary district send a board member that's a member?
I'm CMSA's board member
Yeah.
for CSRMA. So it's a mixture of some staff, some board members.
Yeah, isn't it more about political legislation and, I don't know, I just got it was so big that I had a hard time figuring out our role to be that active in it.
And you really need to go to CASA, right?
I guess it's a close relationship. Is that a fair, accurate way to put it? I wish I had more background for the board. In my time here so far, I've had the opportunity to be more involved in the CSRMA, and I just haven't been able to make time for it. So I wish I was a little more better informed on it. But
Did you say what the acronym meant? If not-
California Sanitary Risk Management Authority. So that's when we have incidents like property damage and we're dealing with claims and so forth. That is the organization, the umbrella organization, and of course we work with private parties within that. Anyway, it's simply an important part of our risk management aspect of our business as a business.
And as I understand it, one of the reasons we actually approve these official appointments is that if a board member attends, then that board member can get board fees for attending that meeting.
Right, you're under the authorized.
So it is.
Are you a voting member? Do you know? I don't think so. Just reporting?
A lot of the work by CSRMA is done by the program administrator and their consultants. Then they have an executive board, they have various committees, and the committees have a certain level of authority, and the executive board does, and a few matters have to go to the full board, so those meetings are scheduled at the CASA conference.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's good to appoint someone that could attend the CASA conferences, so
Right.
your district has a vote at those few meetings each year.
Okay. So Mary, are you interested?
Sure.
I think it would be good because your
I think that'd be
attorney
good.
background with risk management and all that, it would be great.
Sure.
We need
I
a
second that.
motion. That was the motion?
Yes.
Okay, a second. Any discussion in the audience? Board, take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, representative to attend LAFCO meetings. Now, that was by, Wasco did it before, and I don't think we have a vote on the LAFCO. I don't think we're not the special district yet, so it's just
That would change.
attendance at the meeting.
Yeah, I did it for 1 year, so if you have any questions, they cancel their meetings a lot.
But they are interesting because the board itself has like a couple supervisors,
I think, water district. It's kind of a very expansive group throughout the county, so you get a lot of people that are on that board that you don't normally see and interact with. And you do have a voice, you just don't have a vote.
How
So
often do they meet?
once a month, and they have a new director now who's much more active, and they're starting to look at redeveloping a new strategy plan, which could influence our sphere of influence.
Yeah, so Keen Simons is the new executive officer, I think is his title. He's not so new anymore, he's getting settled in, but there are a number of important LAFCO-related business items that are going to be unfolding over the next roughly 6 to 12 months. So principal among those is going to be the 5-year municipal service review cycle restarting. Their schedule shows basically the central Marin portion of the wastewater utilities being evaluated, I think, roughly in the first half of calendar year 2015. So if you're not familiar with that, in essence, what it is LAFCO's, it's a required review. It's intended to be every 5 years, and it's simply a review of existing boundaries and who's serving who, and does it still make sense? Are there changes that should be looked at? They issue findings and reports as a result of the MSRs, and but that is not the same as compelling action. They simply issue a report with their essentially their evaluation and recommendations. The district is, I think, the current board members, but maybe so the newer board members may not be so familiar with it. We have 2 long-standing relatively minor annexation issues. One being what's referred to as the Marin Park neighborhood, and then San Quentin Village, not San Quentin Prison, San Quentin Village, which is residential. Those are both existing Marin County administered sewer maintenance districts, and there's, for at least, I think generally speaking, 10 plus years, there's been at least some recognition that eventually some type of annexation process needs to be looked at. I don't want to speak for the county. Certainly, we haven't talked much about San Quentin Village, but we have had initial staff level discussions on the Murray Park, and I think there's a general expectation, for example, that annexation process is quite likely to come back into activity in the next, again, say 6 to 12 months. So municipal service reviews and at least 1 or 2 active annexation requests in the next 6 to 12 months. All of that would be central to LAFCO.
What time zone do they meet?
It's like
It's between 3rd and
Tuesday.
4th, I'll do it.
Well, Mary was interested in doing it last year for the real appointment. I don't know.
The special district seats.
Special district.
You can look it up. Well, I wonder, you've been to LAFCO meetings, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I did the rate studies for both San Quentin Village and Murray Park, so, and I know about annexing, but I don't want to meet if it's not like the 3rd or 4th week.
If you look it up online, Marin LAFCO, it'll tell you, I think something tells me it's either the first or the last week of the month.
Give us 1 minute. And
Yeah.
we'll,
I feel like I should be able to pull it up because Pat emailed about his availability to go recently. I want to say it's like the...
Did you want to be on that?
I'm torn between saying sure and I don't want another meeting, but Michael? Or
I was thinking Michael
No, I've
could be
done
on
it a year. It's
I'd like
really
to-
not a lot of work. You should probably review what's on their agenda.
I was, to clarify, and this is definitely kind of based on my expectations and understanding, that with the activity that I just described coming up, that wouldn't necessarily in any way mandate like attending every monthly meeting. It would just be, you want to keep tabs on it when things are getting active, you want to, yeah, so.
All right, so I'm seeing an April 10th meeting, which means I think it is like the second Tuesday.
The next 3 meetings are scheduled for the first half of the month.
Pardon me?
August 14th, October 9th, and December 11th are the next 3 meeting dates.
They don't get it all.
Are they canceled?
All right, I would accept a
motion
that I be represented.
I so move Priscilla for LAFCO.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. How about the North Bay Water Association Board?
We just joined that.
I know, I haven't even been on it a year.
And you like it, you think
Yeah,
it's
it's fun. It's really fun.
I went the other day and thought it was fascinating. Learned a
Yeah.
lot.
okay.
Can you be my alternate? Okay,
Whatever you get.
if I get it.
Well, I was thinking we'd let Michael do that one.
Well, I'd like to stay on. I haven't even been on it a year. I've only been on it since December. I've just been on it 6 months. I'm just starting to integrate into.
Why don't we make Pamela and Michael the alternate? Okay with everybody?
I'd still move next Wednesday.
And then you can have it next year.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Trying to move this along. Okay, now our committees. The standing committee to explore options for development of the development/sale of the property at Larkspur Landing. Now, is that going to involve much work for a while? Probably not.
Well, it might, because
Well, but we gotta clean it up, so it might.
we gotta deal with the EPA, we gotta deal with the Roadgate Bridge Highway Transportation District one.
Yeah, so there's I think a highlight to there of the activity would sort of wax and wane, because it will depend on other parties, the timing. But the current activity that we can reasonably say is out there. Number one, we are in the process of submitting the final application to the EPA Region 9 for what we call the no further action finding for the site related to the PCBs. That doesn't require a lot of discussion or activity, but once we get an answer back, it's going to be a very important piece of information. And then secondly, there is an outstanding decision that we've had out there for about 1.5 years now to pursue what we generally refer to as a near-term parking agreement with one or more parties at a minimum Goldgate Bridge Highway Transportation District. So those are both open items. I think just to clarify for everybody, and not to jump the gun on the city of Larkspur's, but I think everyone's aware that the station area plan process, which has obviously been front and center for the last several months, is completely closed out. They are voting to essentially officially declare it ended. So there is no further action expected on the whole, that entire topic. So we do continue, and I think the board, all the board members, again, new board members may not be aware of this. We regularly get private party inquiries on the property, probably every 2 to 3 weeks. So there's obviously a tremendous amount of interest in it. There's a tremendous amount of community interest in it, as we learned during the last several months of public discussions on the stationary plan. So it's a little unpredictable because we don't control the EPA process, and we can only work with our partners like Goldgate Highway Transportation as events allow us to proceed. So my best summary would be expected to kind of come in, again, sort of in focused bursts of activity for a short period of time, and then probably no activity for a while. But obviously, a very, very important topic for the district.
Should we keep this in the committee?
There is a proposal being shopped around that I'm going to try to have them meet with you.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's
There's a
talk about
nonprofit group
it. Let's do the committee.
with a plan, and I met with Dan Morrison, and one of the people, one of the nonprofit people, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And so they would like to it was just to make sure Larkspur is okay with what's going on here. And I said, I can't speak for the board, but let's how about you coming together with our manager, and if he thinks it looks something like we should talk about, then we'll have the committee call a meeting and actually look at the proposal.
Yeah, that actually brings up a very important point. The district, we're clearly in a position that if the board chose to, what we have been convinced conveying to all the various interested parties who have been contacting us on the site is we have basically told them all, please sit tight. We have a lot on our plate right now. When we have time and focus to deal with the property, we will most likely go out and essentially have a fairly open process to solicit, concepts or proposals or interest, and that we will kind of do that in a fairly uniform manner. So if you ask yourself what this committee could be doing in the near term, if the board were to decide this, obviously it's a separate discussion from this consideration of the committee, you could begin to set that process in motion, the workshops, putting it out there that we are open to start hearing proposals. So you do have, the district will have the opportunity, if you choose, to somewhat bring this conversation back to the front burner for the community. Under the more narrow focus of what is the current owner of the property, the sanitary district, and everything you know about it, what would we like to do with the property? So, for example, Frank, that party would be one of several that might come and talk to you.
This is an interesting one, is they don't want to buy the land. They want us to own the land, and they would lease it. And they think they can come up with about $5 million in grants to clean up the property, all the PCBs out there. It's a real, initial discussion at the stages.
Yeah.
They're wondering if they should even pursue it or not. And I said, no, we can talk about it.
Yeah. So this committee will have potentially some pretty interesting business to do with it.
Are either of you interested in this committee?
No, I'm not. I'd like to nominate Frank, because he and I have done this together last year, and
I would recommend that you both continue.
that's fine, I'll be fine, because I think it's like you said, it'll be hit and miss.
Michael, is that okay?
I should just be very careful here because I actually have a very good friend of mine who has some interest in that, and I probably might not want to be on that.
Maybe the same person.
No, I don't. I'm awfully sure it's not.
So you'd be a good one to not be.
I would be probably a good person.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure I could do it and be fair, but
I was a planning commissioner for 8 years.
I don't want anybody to have any thoughts about it.
Directors Meigs and Egger. Okay with everybody? Okay. The Standing Committee on Board Policies and Procedures. That committee really didn't meet, did it?
No. No, we're putting out other fires. But I think the HR now is sort of gobbled up.
I was going to
The
say.
board
it's
and
sort of-
policies, yeah.
It's morphed into.
It's right.
two of
So
those.
I think we
Split
can actually
between
get rid
finance
of
and
it.
You
HR.
combine it, maybe.
Well, it's split, really it's split between finance and HR. And so I think we could have each of those. Let's eliminate that committee. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, the finance committee, I'd like to be on the finance committee.
Good, I'm happy for you. I've been on it 2 years. I'd also like
Mary, would you
to,
like to be on that?
I'd like to nominate,
I think the treasurer should be on that.
I'd like to nominate Frank,
Well, look, that's
unless somebody else is dying.
Okay. So,
I just said as the treasurer, I thought it would be something I should do.
That's fine.
It's a lot of work.
I move to have Mary and Tom be on the standing finance.
Okay, sounds okay to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
HR committee.
Relatively new committee, just again for everyone's background, created last year and really just got onto a fairly regular meeting schedule in the past, say roughly 5 months, 4 or 5 months, something like that, maybe 6. We developed this committee in coordination with the efforts we were taking to bring in outside HR resources and to basically provide the committees at a minimum is making sure that now that we've gone that direction, we made that very important decision, we're committing a lot of resources to it. We felt it warranted a standing committee. They meet monthly, they have been meeting monthly, that doesn't necessarily have to continue. There will be a significant amount of HR-related and very important long-term decision-making occurring in the next 12 months. It's hard to overstate that. We have everything from the new labor negotiations and the resulting contracts. We have all the areas of work that the RGS people are addressing with us. The district, I think, has made, from all the feedback I've been receiving, I think we've made really significant progress on this front in the past year and a half, and we've really set a good direction. This committee basically acts as the board oversight of that. So there will be quite a bit going on.
I have a question. You said about labor negotiations. I thought you said at one of the boards that we were going to hire somebody separate for that?
Correct, Pam, and obviously that's subject to future board, discussion and decision making, but the working assumption at staff level right now is that part of the team that the district would develop for this process, the labor negotiations, is bringing in specialized, outside services for that, similar to what, many other local agencies do, because it's such an important and specialized area of work.
Well, wouldn't that be in closed session though? If you're negotiating, because CMSA, that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
it's
correct.
In closed session.
Correct. Aspects of it, I do believe are. I don't know if it's exclusively. It's a contract negotiation.
Greg, I don't think we're going to be talking about authority to negotiate in the HR committee. That is a closed session item, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
But I think some of the framework in terms of policies and how this organization wishes to be as an employer will be discussed in the HR committee and will be relevant when you do come to consider how you want to frame a labor contract and authorize a labor negotiator.
So you would come to the board in a closed.
The whole board in a closed
You would
session,
kind
yes.
of
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I get
Yeah,
it.
that's a very important point. Thank you. The HR committee in no way will be, solely responsible or even in the lead for the labor negotiations. They'll play an important role in some of the building block activity that's occurring over the next 6 months or so in the run-up to the negotiations. So important distinction, the role of that standing.
Well, it's probably good to keep at least one of the say person on, rather than really just changing to fill in the vacant ones.
Oh, I don't want to be on finance and HR.
I did finance for 2 years. It's a lot of work in finance. I've done policy making 10 years on the Fairfax General Plan, so I'm sorry I'm not.
I will say.
Michael, what?
Michael, would you?
Yeah, Michael.
Will Tom do it with me?
Me and HR.
So if we
Finance and HR can be friends.
if we do solo board, Steve?
Still doesn't.
I'm sorry, solo didn't want it.
Well, with the and then I do have
got you.
a employment law background,
I'm
so
sorry.
it's-
Gotcha, I'm sorry. So,
I would love to do it.
Okay, well,
Is it going to continue to meet every month?
I really anticipate that the workload is actually going to get more substantial. I'm sorry I have to say that, but you saw the work plan.
Yeah.
I would be lying to you if I
Yeah,
said
this
we
is
didn't need to
big
meet
time that's
regularly.
going on
What
for us.
about you, Tom? Can you do it? Are you on
I'm on
committees?
finance.
Are you on?
I'll do it. Michael and I will do it. If anybody else is okay with that.
We'll have a lot of conflict.
We'll make it as
I think
expeditious
with
as
your
we can.
background, though, with your background there.
Yeah, I have enjoyed it. I just was
I'm
trying
sure
to.
every other month of meetings would be enough. Rather than meeting every month for an hour and a half, is take it half a day out of your life.
Okay.
Maybe we'll schedule the HR and the finance.
Oh, that would actually be excellent. That would be
Let's
excellent.
do that.
Yes, I would rather have a longer
That's
run
fine.
out of my life. Yeah.
We can do that.
Thank you. That's right.
Okay, all the boards in favor of that? Thank you very much. Oh my God, it's
Can I
a
ask a question? Are we done with our committees? I'd have to wait for the next agenda because I wanted to Michael talked about forming an educational outreach committee for the community. He's got all these ideas we think that have been sort of left behind because of all the other issues we've been dealing with, and the money's been sitting there and not being used. So is this the time to do that, or should we wait till the next?
This is a good time to put it on the next
So,
agenda.
Yeah, bring it up at the end for request for
Okay.
future agenda
And
items.
how about if you and I spend some time and come up with a more concrete idea?
Sure.
And rather than random thoughts.
Okay, now we're on to item 7, which is open time for public to raise items not on the agenda and or to put on for future agendas. Any public out there? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to number 8, the consent calendar. Would anybody like to pull, any of the board members want to pull any items off the consent calendar?
I just wanted to talk about C a bit. Maybe we just pull it that way.
Which one?
C.
That's another question too.
I have a question. I believe that, and I'm sorry if I don't know exactly, but isn't there a roll call on one or two of these items on the consent calendar? Hold on.
There's a resolution.
Resolution. Don't we need to do a roll call vote for resolutions, and in that event, it would not be on the consent calendar?
We could just pull it and take a vote, roll call.
Oh, that's
Can't you roll
eight.
call the whole consent?
D and
You
E.
could, well, if it's gonna all be approved, you could roll call the whole.
So you can
consent.
I would
discuss that.
prefer to pull it and do it if it's supposed to be roll call.
So we can
So it's pulling A and E? No, not A and E. What's it?
C was the one.
C, I'm sorry.
D is a resolution. E is a resolution.
So C and E.
Yeah, whatever there's a resolution for, roll call
Well,
vote.
there's just two, and then Frank wants to discuss.
B is just minutes.
Yeah. So you can make a motion for A, B, F, G, and H.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion for A, B, F, G, and H.
D and E.
Oh.
G and E.
And
A, B, F, G, and H.
yeah, I would so move for
A, B, F.
A, B, F, G, and H.
Wait.
Is that-
Yeah,
I
that's it.
But I thought we just talked about D and E, if they're roll call votes, right?
Oh,
Yeah, we're gonna-
well, we're pulling.
We're pulling the two roll call votes.
Okay,
We're
Just so I know,
pulling-
just so I know.
We're pulling C, D, and E.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on A and B? And this is just my naivety, having been brand new at this. Minutes. I looked at the minutes here, and I believe it's 90 pages.
92.
92
I read
pages.
them all.
I did too, and my question is, it's really, I think, difficult to approve. I mean, I can prove that they're here and they seem accurate. I went back and I looked at some CASA, the CMSA, and some of the other meetings that I've been to, and their minutes are
Action items.
action item minutes as by Robert's rules, and it's fabulous. If I want to go back and see something in particular, everything's online, and I can go watch it. It's being videoed, and every single word with no question is inflection and everything else, what was truly meant at the time. And I don't, you know, why are we doing the transcript kind of thing? I mean, in the past 2 years, there's been some tremendous amount of stuff going on.
Right.
And maybe that's why we did it, but maybe it might be a thought that to say I approve 90 pages, every word of it is. I'm happy to go with whatever. I'm just bringing that up.
Michael, I was going to propose in the, for our next meeting that we adopt Robert's Rules of Order for doing our minutes. These aren't minutes, they're transcripts. And I think it's a disservice to us to have to prove a transcript when actually Robert's Rules says you just approve action. Here are the action items that you took. So I think we'll get that on next month's agenda.
Okay.
Because I agree, 90 pages is too much.
I would just, you can vote and say that you're voting for these minutes even though you were not present at the meeting, or you can abstain because you weren't present at the meeting. And if you vote for the minutes, you're voting that you believe that they reflect the minutes of the meeting because you were not there. So you can abstain, or you can just vote saying
Well,
you
we can't-
believe they're inaccurate.
We can't abstain unless we pull those items.
You know, you can abstain. It would be a 3-2 with 2 people abstaining.
No, but we have to pull them, you see what I mean? We're
From
gonna
the
do a
other
roll
people.
call.
Yeah, you can't.
I have no problem saying that it depends what I'm approving. If I'm approving that they exist in the board packet and I looked at them and they seem reasonable to me,
So,
absolutely I
I was going to abstain because
so, but what happens, Charlie, with new board members who were not at that meeting and sitting up here, is they abstain, they don't vote. And sometimes a board member misses a meeting because they're wherever they are, and they don't vote on those minutes because they weren't at the meeting.
I'd like to pull A and B too.
Might as well do that.
If anybody would be interested, I actually printed out, because I'd never read this stuff before, the actual item 60 of Robert's Rules. It says definitively what action
We don't have
minutes are.
Robert's rules for
Yeah,
this
we
board.
don't have Robert's.
We have a different,
Okay.
is it Stephen?
We can talk about that next.
Yeah, I just.
We're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's, so we modify it now. Somebody made a motion, it's now just F, G, and H.
Sorry?
Yeah.
What did we do?
We're going to pull A and B.
Oh,
A
on
and B,
consent.
so, yeah.
So can you modify your motion?
And I would, so that motion is restated, it's just going to be F, G, and H.
F, G, and H.
That's,
I'll second that.
Okay.
that's a consent.
All in favor, oh, it's a roll call? No, it doesn't need to be all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries. Now, let's go to A and
No,
B.
I would so move item A of the consent, item A, the minutes.
We can do A and B.
I'm sorry, let's do A and B together. I would so move the minutes from Wednesday, May 28th, and Wednesday, June 18th.
Okay, a second?
Second?
Okay. Discussion? Any board discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? 2 abstain.
Perfect.
Okay, C. 8C, approve updated pay schedule to comply with California Government Code. Now, I actually had a point on this one, too. All we're really doing is approving 2 changes. Right?
Not necessarily. What you're doing is, this was an action that resulted from a recommendation from the last audit. And what they noted was that basically the recommendation was to, you can see it in the staff report, finding number 3, indicated that we just needed some minor updates to the public posting of our salary schedules. This is not changing any aspect of the current salary or compensation structure for any position. It's strictly filling a public, basically a public posting best practice that we weren't following. The generals meant, specifically, and this is again from the audit recommendations, we have added, we did this some time ago, so this is, we've already been doing it in practice, meaning specifically the general manager's salary is always publicly posted on the pay schedule. And just a clarification of terminology that the schedule is showing monthly pay in most cases. So this is, I think, again, new board members may not be aware of this, but this information that you see here has been long regularly posted on our website. And again, it's really just a minor revision to the practices. Is all you're approving. I want to be very crystal clear, this is not any type of a pay change or an approval. All of the pay rates that are in this schedule are ones that were approved via existing agreements that the union and MOA set.
Well, but that's my point. We're not necessarily approving the whole pay schedule. We're just approving those 2 changes, or 2 additions.
Yeah, you're approving an updated pay schedule, I guess. Is that?
It's an edit,
Yeah.
so we wouldn't want it, right.
You
But this
are
becomes the
approving the
new,
pay schedule as edited.
it replaces the previous one. I mean, maybe semantic.
So where is the other one?
Well, the changes are that they added a heading, and then they added Greg's pay schedule, and that's it.
So Pam, the existing, so to speak, looks nearly identical to what you have in your staff report, with the exception that we didn't have the word monthly at the top. And in the past, the general manager's salary, which is on the back of the second half of the schedule, was not actually spelled out. I think it had wording, or it has wording, something like, established by contract or per contract. So this simply says you always put the actual salary, not just refer to the contract. So I hope that makes sense. Again, this has been long publicly posted information. It's two very minor edits to our standard for posting the salary information.
To make it more clear and then more transparent, because it gives your actual salary.
Correct,
I
and to
guess-
address the recommendations.
Yeah, it's
from
just
the-
how the caption for the staff report kind of.
Oh, okay, I
It's
see your
getting
point, I see your point,
confused me,
yeah.
Because if you say pay schedule, I'm looking, oh, look at that.
Yeah, I
So
see
I
your
just was
point.
trying, okay.
Okay, it could have, we probably could have worded that a little more carefully, but I fully understand.
Director Edgar, you want to?
Sure. From time to time, newspapers post salaries. Fire captain made $250,000. The name, everything. Are
Yeah.
salaries posted by name in Sacramento at the
Controller side?
controller's
No.
office?
Yes.
No, they're posted by job class.
What do we mean by
They're
name?
posted by job
The
class.
state controller site?
Yeah.
I thought
They're by name.
They're by name.
Since when?
They're
Yours.
supposed to be.
Post Bell, I think, we think.
Yeah, you're right. You could search by the employee's name and
I
it
think
would come up.
since the United Federated case.
That's been my understanding,
Right.
both here and in my past district, that, and again, it flowed out of some legislation and activity
Yeah,
with after the Bell. So they created basically all the agencies that are subject to a report every year, and it's a very public, very complete database as far as I know.
They put stuff out like, here's the it includes this is salary with overtime, with longevity pay, et cetera.
Yes,
That's
it's very detailed.
With
It's a
all
more-
the benefits.
Yes.
So what we're seeing here is,
This is the base salary.
Base
this is
salary.
no bennies.
Correct, this is just, this is the basic.
So how can we say that this is accurate then, if we don't have it all?
Well, this is supposed to be all.
This is verbatim.
Oh, no, this is salary, this is
This is just salary.
salary.
But why wouldn't we have the benefits?
That's not what this is.
It's
for.
not what it's addressing.
This is salary.
Yeah, it's strictly the direct
Okay.
wages aspect of compensation.
Okay, any more questions by the board? Any questions out there in the public?
Oh, maybe a quick question. We got this memo from Julie Blue that says we're going to become employees now.
Yeah, remember that was a
Right.
board item.
Right.
We talked about it, I thought it was coming back. We didn't have
No,
to.
our understanding was we had informed the board and presented it to you as a requirement for compliance with the federal, with the federal IRS regulations. So we presented it and said this is the direction we're going, and it was a discussion item.
Oh, I thought it was coming back. I'll check my minutes.
Yeah.
I sit on 4 public agency boards. 3 of them, CMSA, Ross Valley, Paramedic Authority, and Marin Mosquito Vector Control District, give us like a W-9 at the end of the year. We're not employees.
Right, we treat it as a.
So I'm just concerned about all of a sudden now we become employees. And that's why I just wanted to have the opportunity to say, no, I didn't want to become an employee.
There is a difference in that you're elected to this board, and at least the two authorities, you are appointed. I don't know about the Marin and Mosquito Vector
I was
Control.
appointed.
It's appointed. Appointed officials are different. They can be contracted, independent contractors, and you fill out a W-9 and we could supply a 1099. That's what we used to do, but apparently that's wrong.
And the good news, Frank, is you can check word for word in our minutes exactly.
I know. I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, and this topic has kind of been out there back and forth for a while because, well, for various reasons. And so it has taken a long time to get to this point, but the direction we had set in motion was at the start of the new fiscal year, we selected that as the break point to go ahead and make the change. So it was, we did The very clear direction we've gotten from both from the auditors and I believe, did you guys take a look at this? I don't know, I'm going to ask you for. But my point, we had the direction from the auditor was very unambiguous. Staff then did some additional research of the IRS regs that they cited. We presented a report to the board a few months back, presenting all of that. And the reason we said we presented it as sort of an informational item is because it had no discretion as far as there was no option for the district.
Really?
Yeah, it was just required by law at that point.
It's not required by law.
Well, that
There's
is
some
true.
cities that have no retirement for their employees.
No, he's saying it's required that as an elected official, we be paid.
Yeah,
Through payroll.
that will not treat you as
Through payroll.
subcontractors.
Yeah.
It's through payroll rather than as an independent contractor on a
Well,
1099.
let me clarify, because it was, early on when this item was first being talked about, it was tied very closely to a related item, which is once you're an employee of a district, there is some question regarding to what our CalPERS contract requires for offering any participation in CalPERS as an employee. So even though you obviously only have a few hours a month as a board member, technically speaking, it was unclear in our contract with CalPERS whether or not that participation was mandatory or voluntary, et cetera. And we eventually separated those two issues. One reason being that we simply have not been able to get a black and white answer from CalPERS yet on a few outstanding questions regarding that particular item, meaning the federal law says you have to be an employee, we make you an employee. That then triggers questions about whether the CalPERS contract requires us to offer you participation in CalPERS. So the reason we've separated those issues is because we don't have clarity on the CalPERS aspect yet. So there was that linkage early on, and I hope that's not confusing. We are waiting for word from CalPERS, and when we get it, that the second part of this discussion is, which is discretionary, I believe, that you will have some actions to take and set policies to how you want to handle the CalPERS participation for future board members. Right now, they're two separate items.
So then you're going to deduct out of the money that we get, you're going to deduct the costs of the retirement.
Potentially,
How much is that?
What's
that going to cost us?
We had some specific dollar figures in a staff report a couple months ago. I don't have it off the cuff, but
Well, do we pay our employees 8%? What is it?
yeah.
The employee portion is 8%,
Okay.
and the district has to contribute 18.1%. And this does make it more expensive for the district even without that, because we now have to do employer portion of employer taxes.
I thought we had a choice. Didn't we had a financial
There's two-
committee on this? Didn't we
So-
have a choice?
Can we, let me, we're
We're way off the topic.
Yeah, that's-
How about throwing it on the agenda for next month, the next meeting?
which,
This whole issue.
This-
I'd like to see PERS, how they're going to deal with it.
we don't know.
It's two different things.
Yeah.
One is we have to put you on the payroll, so we need that
I
done
may not be able to
before.
go on the payroll.
We have to.
I may not be able to, me personally. And
Well, let me
let's
try
do
to
this
clarify
one.
again.
I'm a PERS retiree.
The-
You see, what's,
Oh, yeah, no,
There's an
now I've got a
exception for
huge
elected
conflict.
officials.
No, I understand.
And you get like
There's an
560
exception.
hours you can work.
Let me
There's an exception for elected
please
officials.
clarify, let's bring this back.
okay.
You have, these are two separate items, that one is related to the other, but they are not linked and separate. The item for you, the information is that you, per the federal regulations, there is no discretion of the district that you can be remaining contracted, outside contractors. For federal tax purposes, you have to be district employees. It's not discretionary. So you're being informed by Julie that process, which was talked about on and off for the last 3 or 4 months, has now been completed. Okay, completely separate over here is, now that you have that status as a contract employee, there are some unanswered questions about what options you'll have to participate or choose not to participate in any CalPERS-related retirement. And you will have every opportunity to address that question once we get the final word back from CalPERS. And I don't know why it's taking them so long. We've made the request for clarification. Our best understanding is that you will have the option to basically say, we don't want to participate, or no new board members in the future will participate. You'll have a range of options that you get to pick. You are not making any decision. This has nothing to do with what plays out with CalPERS. I guess is my best clarification.
So we don't need it on the agenda till we hear from CalPERS anyway. So let's get back to 8C. There's two changes, two slight additions to an existing rate schedule. And what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion we approve it.
Yes,
Okay, move and second.
yes.
Okay.
Forcing so.
Any more questions by the board?
Which one we're doing?
We're doing 8C.
8C,
Yes,
okay.
the two little changes. Comments from the audience? Okay, let's, all in favor of the changes?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. Okay. Moving on to 8D and 8E. Any discussion on either item? We decided we'd pull these because we want to do a roll call vote.
Let's just take them one at a time. D is a fraud reporting policy.
That's
a
a
resolution.
fraud reporting policy. Very complicated.
Yeah.
The plan is still committed.
Well, I don't think we had one before, am I correct on that?
Correct. There was no
So
fraud
this
reporting
is
policy.
really a big deal, I think, for this agency that's 110 years old. This is the first fraud policy.
Where was this developed?
Well, the recommendation came from the audit.
Right.
And then the draft, the fraud policy itself was developed by staff looking at some other, initially, and then it was circulated to HR and legal. And it's been through a couple of iterations. It's been vetted with, through the meet and confer process with ASME. So that's basically the process that's gone through it. And the reason it was on consent, to be clear, was that when we had considered this before, the board, I can't recall if there was an actual vote, but there seemed to be unanimous support for it, but we were asked to postpone approval so that we could complete the meet and confer process with the union, which has largely occurred. That's why you're seeing it tonight on the consent calendar.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move.
Second?
Okay, any discussion out in the audience? Any further discussion on the board? Roll call vote.
Director Sinha, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Mays?
Aye.
Director Gaffney?
Aye.
Director Borstein?
Aye.
Director Enger?
Aye.
Okay, great. Now we're moving on to 8E, adoption of resolution 1481, approving the report of sewer service charges for fiscal year and directing the following charges to be collected by the county tax collector. So every year, we do our sewer service charges. This year, there was a change. I believe Julie prepares the report that goes to the county, and we collect the charges with the property tax. Virtually every sewer agency in Marin and many of them across the country do this, and it's by far the least expensive way to do it.
And this is just a requirement of the Health and Safety
And
Code.
it's a requirement to get them on the property tax roll.
August 8th or August 10th, something like that. And we, years past, there was sort of we didn't do the resolution every year, and recently we've been coming back and confirming the rates set being done by resolution. So that's something that a new practice started.
Oh, I thought you had to confirm it, you had to pass a resolution together in the years.
We did, but when Marin County, they accepted our tax rolls, and so we now confirm them. Since
Well, I
I've
think
been-
it's a good idea.
Yeah, no, it's.
Any further discussions on this? Is our main source of revenue by far. select one of the districts here.
I think this is a typo. It still says acting general manager, and you are no longer the acting general manager. Legally, you would be considered, that's third whereas.
Oh, okay, very good. Correct.
Come down and
And then we also have unknown and unknown signature block, so we have.
right. So we can fill those in.
You know what is really useful? The county produces a summary, a one-page summary report. And it's a by use code and then the number of EDUs. It's really a useful document. You get it, well, Julie gets it every year. And it would be useful to have that.
Julie doesn't have it for this year's data, but we are,
She doesn't have it yet.
right, because we
There
haven't
would be a
submitted it.
draft one. Have you submitted one?
We haven't submitted anything to the county yet because we haven't passed the resolution, so.
Well, she's done trial runs, I'm sure.
No,
No trial runs yet?
no, we have only our own documentation.
When she gets them, I would like those, because they're very, the board will like them. Okay, any other,
I'll quick comment quickly. The board had approved the sewer service study and charges on a 4-to-1 vote. I had voted against it. And so to be kind of consistent, I'm going to vote no on this motion. The Ross Valley rate zone, the rate increase is 8%, and the Larkspur rate zone, the increase is 11%. I would have supported half of that, maybe a 4% and a 5.5% or 6%. I don't think we need to collect that much money this year.
any other board comments?
Majority.
I think the rate increase was the basis of a capital improvement program, projection of O&M. The CIP is in response to the cease and desist order. In my opinion, we have to do it.
That's good. Yeah, I don't believe we could put $15 million worth of pipe in the ground every year, and I think we got to get a better handle on how we're
That's it. Any comments from the public? Back to the board. All in favor?
I have one
Pardon? You have a
comment. And I don't know if this is appropriate, but what about somebody who can't pay a rate because of the increase? Are we going to reference a place to link them how to seek out? I know there's some
Carol,
government
I can't hear you.
agencies
What about somebody that can't?
paying this increase. Or can we link the information to the resolution in a way to help them in any way? No?
No, that would have been something that would have been in the ordinance, and ordinance isn't for us at this point.
Okay.
There is, opportunity to figure out, some remuneration if we need to in future deals, and we have to have it kind of proportional to their use. But if we have a case before us in the future.
I mean, what is,
We can look at it.
it might be a public education thing too. Do we do that though, with the rate increase? So what if they don't pay their rate? I'm just curious, what happens?
the lien on the property.
Yeah, it becomes a tax
They have no
rate.
choice.
Yeah, it's collected with the property tax. It's just like if they can't pay the property tax, it's delinquent.
Well, and Marin operates on a teeter program, so we actually receive our revenue, and Marin assumes the lien and responsibility for doing it. We don't do that.
It takes 7 years or so, 6 or 7 years before they can lien the property.
It is.
So do we have a motion here?
I move adoption of 1481.
Second.
Second? We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Oh, this is a roll call.
I think we should.
Oh, this is-
That's the,
That's why we.
Well, which one is this a?
This is
The rate
E,
increase.
8E.
Just
This is
confirming the
mostly a
rates for,
procedural
yeah,
to get it collected.
on the tax roll.
Oh, this is 8E?
8E.
I'm sorry.
It is an
Okay, roll call.
Dr. Zilla?
aye.
Dr. Mays?
Aye.
Dr. Gaffney?
Aye.
Dr. Borstein?
Aye.
Dr. Egger?
No.
Okay, finally, we get to move on to Item 9,
Regular item?
presentation by Mr. Sarah Gary. NBWA Executive Director.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for joining the North Bay Watershed Association.
It was a great presentation last Friday. Even if you're not on the board, I highly recommend it. It was so educational.
The meetings are all open to the public.
Yeah.
Anybody who feels like they haven't gone to enough meetings in the So I want to quickly go over the NBWA mission and goals, talk a little bit about our membership, our organization and structure, some of our accomplishments. I'll try and link them to wastewater interests, and then highlight the benefits of membership and with a little bit about NBWA's role in the future. So this was one of the original maps for the North Bay Watershed Association. We're rather unique in that we're multi-county, multi-watershed, multifunctional. There's one other similar organization for the Russian River, but it only focuses on the drainage to the Russian River. It is multi-county. It doesn't quite have the same representation we do. So we cover originally the drainage to the bay in Marin, the drainage from Petaluma and Sonoma Creek in Sonoma County, and the Napa River drainage. We need an updated map because we basically added Tomales Bay as an associate member, so we represent the interests of Western Marin now, even though they're not a dues-paying member. And because of Prop 84 interests, we now represent the interests indirectly of Solano County, and maybe at some point they'll become members. We'll see. At a good meeting, we get 3 county supervisors, one from Napa, one from Sonoma, and one from Marin. Usually they're so busy we don't get.
Is MMWD now a member?
Yes, they were one of the original members. So NBWA goals, bring together local agencies to work on issues of common interest. The presentations last week were about stormwater and our efforts to help the stormwater entities come up with a more cost-effective way to deal with the new requirements. And then we also had a presentation on delta outflow by an advocate group. So it was big flow, little flow, but it was interesting for the board members. We look at trying to maximize the effective use of resources. We promote watershed stewardship. We're active on watershed-based regulations. We want to influence local, state, and federal policies and programs. And we want to increase eligibility for watershed-based funding, and I'm going to highlight that in this presentation. So member agencies, we've got, as I mentioned, counties, we've got several cities, we have water agencies, Marin Municipal Water District, North Marin Municipal Water District, Sonoma County Water Agency. We have flood control agencies and stormwater agencies, and we also have a number of wastewater agencies. Central Marin has been a long-standing member, Las Colinas, Napa Sand District, Nevada Sanitary District, Ross Valley Sanitary District is now added. San Rafael has temporarily dropped out as a member. We hope they come back, but they had some major budget issues.
Is San Rafael San?
Excuse me?
San Rafael Sanitation District?
No, they're through CMSA.
Okay, well, so.
Well, run by, the collection aid is run by the city.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they're not.
The same as San Rafael, I think, in terms of the way they would be a member.
No, sanitation is.
What does an associate member mean?
Oh, we created that for non-dues paying members. We have 2 categories. Some that don't pay any money, but they'd like to influence our policies.
But they don't get a vote.
They don't get a vote. And then we created group associate members, which was an accommodation for a small sanitary district number 5 originally in Tiburon, and they dropped out, and then they were replaced by Belmarin Keys. So we keep this group associate member and sanitary agency of Southern Marin and the city of Mill Valley both pay a nominal contribution. They're not voting members, but they like to see their name on our website, and we like to accomplish. So here's the organization chart, a little fuzzy. The member agencies become the board of directors. We have a watershed council that meets 3 or 4 times a year, consisting of the watershed groups that exist throughout North Bay, and there's a There's a Friends of for every watershed in the North Bay. And then it also includes the state and federal regulatory and resource agencies. We have an administrative steering committee that meets periodically when the board can't make any decisions or I need some immediate input. I'm the part-time executive director. We had 3 technical committees for years: water quality, habitat and flood, and integrated water resources. And last year we consolidated those into one joint technical committee that will probably meet 8 to 10 times a year, maybe more. And they provide input to the board on policy issues and also the funding of projects. We fund a number of small projects during the course of the year, and I'll give you some examples. So our board meetings are held the first Friday of each month, except August. We skip August. We get very good attendance over the years. And for 2 hours, we usually have 2 speakers. I schedule those pretty far in advance, but we usually have varying speakers. We alternate between Novato and Petaluma, and once in a while we have a meeting in Napa. We will probably have our April or May meeting next year in Napa. The agendas and meeting summaries are on our website, and so are summaries of all our conferences and all the projects that we funded. So that's at ndwatershed.org. I want to highlight some of our major efforts, talk a little bit about regional. I think a few of you went to our conference.
I did.
So we hold those every other year. The last one was, the theme was water resource management, pretty well attended. We had some good keynote speakers. And then usually in the odd years, we have a workshop on a topic like monitoring or something similar. We put a heavy emphasis on integrated regional water management. And have the board members heard of that term? I'll give you a little more background on it. And then we got $1.5 million from EPA to do a North Bay TMDL effort, which actually consists of projects in Marin, Sonoma, and Napa.
And what is TMDL?
Oh, I use an acronym. I thought everybody, most wastewater people know about that. It's total maximum daily load. It comes from the Clean Water Act in 1972, I think, was the original term, and then nobody paid attention to it, and then EPA got sued, and then they paid attention to it, and then they made it a major legal effort across the country to have entities, state agencies usually, do these total maximum daily loads, which then lead to allocations that then they try and regulate, but they're not always successful. So, for example, in the Bay Area, there are TMDLs for PCBs in the Bay. There are TMDLs for sediments for at least 3 tributaries in North Bay and 2 in South Bay. There are TMDLs for coliform for a number of areas in the Bay. So it's an approach to regulate pollutants. Not always effective, since in most cases it's the non-point source loading that's the major contributor, not the conventional point source. But it does affect wastewater agencies on occasion. We also had an example where we helped pass some legislation. NVWA was actually a sponsor for a bill that was eventually signed by the governor in 2011 that dealt with private laterals. And it gave sanitation agencies one extra tool to basically pay for private lateral repair or replacement and then put the cost on the property tax of the individual. I think Las Colinas has included that in their ordinance. I don't know if anybody else in Marin has.
We didn't
Yeah.
do it.
Well, we just became aware of this. I personally just became aware of the AB 741 in the last month or so, and when I read the details, it was pretty clear that it just complements excellently what we're trying to do with the laterals. What it does, in essence, if I understand correctly, Harry, correct me if I get this wrong, is basically if if someone wants their lateral, like today, we might give you a grant, right, to cover half the cost. In the future, under this, as I understand it, if we wanted to say, okay, you're going to replace the entire lateral from the main to the house, and it's $12,000 or whatever, the district could essentially pay for that up front, and then it becomes an assessment on the property over time, which is quite beneficial. I mean, obviously, there are some financial implications, but in terms of making it easy for the customers and the people we want to do this, it's a huge step up, because now the owner that chooses to do this doesn't get hit with the cash, the risk of spending a bunch of money and then not recouping the benefit. Because all they're going to do is make it, these are what, 10 or 20-year assessments?
Right.
So it spreads the payment out and it's connected to the tax roll. So if you sell your house in 2 years, you haven't really, you've really avoided any downside to this. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity. It complements the lateral program overall. It's essentially, as I look at it, like a really administratively efficient zero-interest loan program. I mean, it's just great. And we haven't started working on this yet, but in my view, it's a really exciting item, that complements what we're going to be
I
working
think
on.
Tom was mentioning the other day that the county would actually take care of all the bookkeeping.
Yeah, it's just
That
really
is nothing
efficient.
to
That's what I'm
this.
getting at. It's very administratively efficient. The idea of this, for example, and apologies for the digression here, but versus like a traditional loan program where you're like, okay, here, sign all these papers, we'll keep administrative records for 10 years, and et cetera. This looks, and I'm just going off of preliminary information right now, and it's a relatively new piece of legislation as far as being put in that practical application. But as Harry mentioned, it came out of local efforts. It's definitely something we're going to be taking a look at, so you're going to hear more about it. Yeah.
And the only other thing I wanted to highlight on this list was we're actively involved with the Water Bond Coalition, which is basically the North Coast and the coastal counties in a coordinated effort to make sure that any new water bond that will likely be on the ballot this year will address the interests of the North Coast and the coastal areas. And I can go into a lot of detail, but it's complicated. So some examples, the biggest one for the North Bay regional efforts was before my time, there was a major study done by NBWA on recycling, looking at North Bay, Marin and Sonoma and Napa. And their conclusion was there was a lot more opportunity and there should be a concerted effort. And that led to the formation of another acronym, the North Bay Water Reuse Authority, which has been around for about 8 years now, I think. And that's a formal JPA. It includes Marin entities, kind of Las Colinas North, Novato San, and then Petaluma and Sonoma and Napa Sanitation District. And they've completed EIR, EIS subsequently, and they've been very successful in getting federal and state funding, and they look forward to more, and they're now implementing phase 2 of their program. But the line was kind of drawn at Las Colinas, even though the original study was a little broader. We also did a watershed stewardship plan, and we did our version of an integrated regional water management plan back in 2005 for just the North Bay, but we decided, given what was developing for the entire Bay Area, it was in our interest to participate in the Bay Area effort to be designated as a region rather than splitting it up into subregions. And I'll revisit that. And then we funded a number of small projects over the years, but I just want to highlight a few. We did a project on cost-effective water quality monitoring. We did a project on integrated projects and how to get more of them. We did a project on performance measures, one on fish monitoring that led to additional state funding to monitor steelhead in the North Bay. I mentioned the private laterals. The original project, the NBWA just provided seed money. It was like $12,000. And then it was basically the informal Marin group that provided the bulk of the funding to hire 2 consultants to look at all the technical aspects of private lateral problems and possible ordinances. The original goal was a model ordinance that everybody would agree to.
It's still the goal.
Yeah, that didn't quite happen, but they did agree on all the technical standards, and then they had options for the actual ordinances. And then we funded some cutting-edge studies on climate change, including one on watersheds that takes the kind of big-scale stuff and brings it down to, well, what's actually going to happen in this watershed in North Bay. So.
And that's in progress, right?
Well, the watershed study is done, and that's available on our website. That's about 3 years old and actually does show results for the North Bay. Then we did one on sea level rise for Marin and Sonoma drainage. And now we're funding a new one that we're calling the North Bay Climate Adaptation Initiative. And that's going to focus more on getting different government entities to think more consistently about adaptation methods. And that study is the one that's just started.
So just as a quick follow-up on the North Bay Water Recycling Group, that group, I mean, they have been just incredibly successful. At this point, it takes years of effort, but they are now firmly on track with the Bureau's Title 16 program, which is the primary federal funding source for recycled water. Once you're on the track, once you've got through all the hurdles, now you're basically just waiting for essentially the federal funding cycles. But it takes a tremendous amount of work to get there, but they're a great example. Once you do get there and you maintain those relationships and you make the progress, they have, from what I understand, they've already in the last, say, 5 years, I think their federal funding recipients numbers are in the low tens of millions of dollars, roughly speaking. So very, very substantial federal support for recycled water. Once you've gotten through those hurdles, you've established the tie-ins to the Title 16 program. The key to that, absolutely critical, is the regional approach. The Bureau doesn't want to do business with 5 entities when they can do business with 1 entity in terms of funneling and appropriating the federal funds. So a very, very important example of how regional recycling, water recycling, actually works in terms of getting projects done and getting projects funded. I've looked, I've been involved in recycled water in at least 3 different regions of the state, and when I got up to speed on what the North Bay, this group has been able to do over the past 7 or 8 years, I can tell you that it's really impressive relative to almost any region in the state, what they've achieved. So very good model to keep in mind.
We've got a program going, CMSA, and we're in some water district. MMWD is the lead agency, and they seem to be a little slow in moving the project. We're hoping to get it done before December so we can apply for some of this $800 million of state grant money that's out there.
I'll look into that. What's the title of the study?
Maybe Jason.
I get it from Jason.
Yeah, give Jason a call. It's a joint effort between Central Marin Sanitation Agency and the Marin Municipal Water District. And since we treat anywhere from 8 to 11 million gallons a day of wastewater and then put it in a bag, we use very little for some local stuff. We're trying to help with.
So Greg emphasized the federal money. I'm going to now emphasize state money. And it's the Bay Area Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. It's been around for about 7 or 8 years. There's a website, everything's on there. NBWA's role is to represent the North Bay interests in this process. And we're actually the formal lead for what we call the North Bay subregion, which is a little bigger than our boundaries. I wanted to highlight one thing that was different about Prop 84, which was passed in 2006 and had about $1 billion for integrated regional water management. They divided the state into 11 hydrologic funding regions, which was different from the prior bond, which is Prop 50. All it did was target money for South Coast. It said a minimum had to go to Los Angeles and some other entities in Southern California. So they actually divvied up the $1 billion based on the number of entities and population and said, this is your target amount for the region. So the Bay Area target is $138 million. We're hopeful that after this next round, we'll have about 80-some million out of that, and then there should be one more round after that. I just want to point out that when the state went through the process of designating regions, they wound up with 54 regions approved. There are only 3 that are coterminous. That is, the boundaries for the funding and the boundaries for the planning region are identical. North Coast, the Bay Area, and one that doesn't quite show up in there, SAPA, which that's the 60 million, I guess, yeah. And that,
114.
which
The
one?
114, is that Safa, Santa Ana Water?
Yeah, okay, that's the one, I'm sorry, my geography is off.
No, I
So
Safa.
theoretically, the state can't give that money to anybody else. It has to come to this region. But given the competition through the rest of the state, they designed a process that's fully competitive. So even though the money has to come to the Bay Area, we have to compete for it. And we have to get at least a C+ in our submittal to get the money. But we've been successful so far. So I mentioned the Bay Area subregions. We went through an elaborate policy analysis and looked at all kinds of options, and this is what we came up with. And the effort was to get more outreach to the subregions, get more buy-in to the process, and eliminate the competition so we had one region where we could just target the funds. And so we split it into the North Bay, which is Marin, Sonoma, Napa, and Solano, and NBWA is the nominal lead. Santa Clara is a subregion on its own, given the population.
Okay, but have you divided the
money?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent question. So we went through a more elaborate analysis. We looked at the concept of population. So we had a dozen different options on how to allocate the funds by subregion. And historically, under Prop 50, the North Bay only got 8 to 9% based on population. And there was a push, I'll take some credit for it, that if you're looking at integrated regional water management, area is as important as population, especially if you're talking about flood management or habitat restoration. I won't go into all the process, but eventually the agreement was that it would be based on the number of subregions, the population, and the area equally weighted. So the North Bay's target, since we're 8 to 9% of the population, but 37% of the area, is we get 25% of the funds. So that, in a way, was a major success.
That is very
And if you were heavily populated, would it have been weighted more for population?
Yes. But you go with what you have. So Prop 84 funding to date, we finished round 1 and round 2 is about to be awarded, and we just completed the decision-making for round 3, which is a drought round declared by the governor, and the application has to be submitted by next week. That will get us to the 84 million target, and I just wanted to highlight that out of that 84 million, 28 million went to wastewater and recycling. Dominantly recycling. And I think the only exception was a sea level rise ecotone project in East Bay. So that all went to recycling, and the North Bay got their fair share of that recycling money because of NBWRA.
And was it Los Colinas and Napa Sand that got it?
It was Napa Sand is getting, for example, Napa Sand is getting $4 million out of the next drought round. Sonoma County got a large chunk out of round 2, and Las Colinas and Novato got a large chunk out of round 1. And then the North Bay to date has gotten about 20 million, and that looks like less than 25%, but when you subtract out administration and regional projects, the North Bay is actually on target and is getting more than 25%. So, just kind of a summary, we tout the memberships, benefits of membership as improving information sharing and issues resolution, trying to influence regulations and legislation. We did influence the stormwater regs at a point in time. Increasing eligibility for grant funding, which we've been pretty successful at. Implementing some cost-effective projects where you can save money by doing studies across the region rather than just having every entity do the same kind of work. And then informing and educate with our conferences and workshops. And in the future, we'll probably continue our heavy role in the Bay Area IRWMP. We will continue our efforts with the Water Bond Coalition. We have 2 projects. I mentioned the climate change adaptation. We're also doing another stormwater project, about $35,000 to help the North Bay entities. Stormwater, if you think you have problems with your finances, stormwater has more because they don't have the base
They don't have
funding.
charges, they don't have the ability to
Right, but it doesn't stop the state from forcing them to implement programs. And then we'll have another conference in 2016, and I'm open to input from any board members or any affiliated board members about things we should consider focusing.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you very much. So we're kind of dual members, right? We're members through CMSA,
Yes.
and we've got our own members. That's good.
Do we share our cost for membership, right?
We
do.
the dues are based 50% on the number of entities and 50% on the proportional operating budgets. And what we did was subtract out their operating budgets, so you weren't paying double.
Okay. I knew there was some sale there.
So did they save money then? Did Central do it?
No, you saved money.
No, because they understood the income to CMSA through us.
Well, we like anything you can help coordinate regionally. We're all for that. And I think laterals are going to be the name of the game. Fixing laterals is really where a lot of action is. And I've been hearing from the realtors that they want a uniform ordinance across the county. Why not
Maybe we can
across
start
three
that.
counties?
Do you want to revisit that, Jason?
Talk outside of it, right?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. A break. Let me say, 5 minutes.
You can say 5
You
minutes.
can say whatever you want.
Direction on contracting for financial advisory services and bond counsel services for the next fiscal year, which are the next bond issuance. And so we need Ray to discuss this.
Yeah, we actually do.
Can you? How about the? I think he's out there talking to Joey.
What was the line? Put together.
How long is Harry doing?
So Peter, the handout that Peter gave, that's his report from the financial committee.
Can you hold off 1 second until we finish with the vacuum cleaning over there?
Oh, we're used to that. It'll go on for a while.
And talk really loud.
So what did Peter do?
Where's that handout?
He gave us
That's very good. Give the hand.
That's
Oh,
Peter's,
That's an orange.
that's a summary of our,
Yeah.
yeah, but we went over them.
Great, we're on item 10, which is selection contracting for financial advisory and bond counsel services for the next year. Maybe give us a brief.
Yes, I will keep it very brief. This got a good discussion on Finance Committee. So the district's current financial, our basic planning documents, so to speak, the adopted budget, the 5-year forecast, the rates, et cetera, reflected. One of the next major actions by the district being to secure additional bond financing in support of the capital program. And the general planning projection or scenario that we've been working with anticipated 2 bond issuances over the next 5 years. The first one being relatively quickly to essentially set up funding for the current fiscal year and the next 2 fiscal years. So think of it as roughly 3 fiscal years worth of capital funding. The step that is actually, knowing that this action was pending, there had been past consideration or discussion not to go out for an RFP to secure the very first steps of this process, which is to just get our financial team in place to assist us with the bond issuance process. And that core team basically includes the financial advisor and the bond counsel. And so to be crystal clear, the action before the board this evening does not in any way authorize any steps towards bonding. It is direction on how we would like to secure the professional services of the financial advisor and bond counsel roles. The 2 basic alternatives that are before the district, before the board this evening, are to retain or provide direction to retain the current, or I shouldn't say current, the recent financial team that we used in the last bond issuance. We also assisted the district in prior efforts at bond issuances that didn't actually come to completion. And the other, again, is to go out to essentially a request for proposals process to seek a new team, again, financial advisor and bond counsel. So the staff report basically summarizes what we saw as the pros and cons of those two approaches. And we focused really on essentially three or four main considerations, which is, obviously we want to make sure we get high quality service. This is a very, very important role being played by the finance team. The cost of that service, are we getting competitive rates relative to the market? Timing of funding is a very important aspect of this, because the district's cash flow picture is such that in order to maintain the currently scheduled capital projects, we are looking at approximately an October funding window. Now, so funding means the whole deal is essentially closed and monies are in the bank, so to speak. The bond sale has been completed. So under the last consideration was general best industry practices, and obviously that's a fairly qualitative, if not subjective, set of criteria in terms of what are considered good practices. So quality of service, we summarized as the last experience with the past team, generally good. When we go out to an RFP, obviously that's something we would be looking for. Cost of service, we have verbal commitments, I would call them at this point, that you see in attachment A. They reflect the cost commitments that we've received from the past team. We would need to figure out what we think is acceptable and be able to use that for evaluating any future proposals if we did an RFP. And then the timing, again, consideration there is under a traditional, what I would call standard RFP process, which can take several months. We do start to put at risk the timing objective of the October funding. Now, it is possible. We have presented what I would call a standard RFP process. However, we can make that quicker if we want, if the board did decide to go to the RFP process. So I want to emphasize, because during the Finance Committee discussion, which again was very helpful, I think we want to clarify that it's not an all or nothing proposal here. If the board, or after your considerations, really felt that the direction was to go out and seek additional proposals, we do have the flexibility to still have that process meet the October funding timeline. We would simply accelerate the RFP process. These aren't super complex RFPs. We could move forward through it pretty quickly. Staff recommendation with all those considerations was to provide direction for us to develop a contract with the recent finance team based on the information in the rate study, or pardon me, in the staff report. But again, it became quite clear from the Finance Committee discussion that there's a strong inclination to want to go pursue a competitive RFP. So I want to stress that I think either direction can work. We would want to make sure that there's consensus or direction on two important factors. One is, if we do go out to RFP, do we think it's reasonable to still work that process around a timeline that provides funding in October? Because that's a very important objective, we still believe. And the other question that could come up is, do you want to what level of funding do you want to see? And that's a more complicated question, but it did come up in the finance committee discussion, so I suspect as you go through this evening, it will also come up. And we would suggest that assuming that there is some level of bonding pursued, that it be no less than the current and the next fiscal year, so that we at least have that level of financial clarity, in terms of going forward. What that means in plain English is, if it's not, maybe it's not a $40 million bond, maybe it's something less than that. But our suggestion to the board is that you work with two objectives here in considering the options. One is still the October funding window, and then secondly, if we do want to look at varying levels of funding, that we get clear direction on what we think that basic minimum number is. And the reason I stress that is because it will influence the cost of issuance, and the people who respond to the RFP will take that amount into consideration. In other words, if we tell them it's 20 million versus 40 million, that's a very important piece of information they need to submit a responsive proposal to the district. So a little bit more that's in the staff report, but I did that, I wanted to capture what I think were the highlights of again, some very important points from the finance discussion. So with that, we'll stop and hand it back to the board.
Okay, comments from the board?
Question?
Questions?
So I'm looking at attachment A, and my concern is the amount of money that we're paying for bond counsel, the amount of money the advisor is taking out of this, out of the. So under par, the second line, they've got 42,785,000. Is that we had talked about 40 million, or is it up to 42 million now? Or is that including all their fees and stuff, 40?
That's, my understanding is the par represents the combination of the net proceeds we receive and all of the costs of issuance. Tom, have I got that?
And a reserve fund.
And the reserve fund, thank you, okay.
So proceeds is estimated to be 40, I suppose, and then the amount of the bond issue would be almost 43.
Who's getting up the other three, or two?
Well, most of it's going into a reserve fund, which is held by a trustee. It's our money, and it's a security feature of the bond, and then it's used to make the last payment. That's what a reserve fund does. So it's our money, and it stays our money. So probably to see the total issuance cost, at least what we have in there, about $190,000.
Yeah.
Who
gets that? Who gets that?
Well, bond counsel gets, in this example, 102 million. Financial advisor gets 47.5. You got to buy a couple of ratings generally.
Yes.
There's a trustee that's just a few $1,000s. There's what else is another big one? We do have disclosure counsel there. Actually, that's most of the expenses right there.
So I was trying to compare.
190. Yeah, that's about almost everything.
So when we did the 17,780, the cost of issuance was 180,000.
And on that view, that's because the district hadn't really gone out to market except for some bank loans. And so they had to prepare the documents from scratch. And let's see, there was the bond counsel disclosure. Financial advisor seems high there, but you've got an asterisk there that says they did some preliminary financial planning.
Say it again. What was the last thing you said?
They did some preliminary financial planning. Evidently, they got hired to figure out what to do. So the district didn't know to sell revenue bonds, for example.
And then there was, I think there was also one of the reasons for doing the refi of those existing bonds is we had that very strange covenant.
Well, the covenant probably was an additional bonds test, which means you can't issue more bonds if you don't have your act together. And if you don't have the revenues to support additional bonds, hey, that's a security feature of of us, protects us. Don't issue more bonds unless you can show you can pay them off. And we hadn't passed a rate increase. So I'm almost positive this one is. So we couldn't pass the additional bonds requirement of the outstanding bonds. That's what I think it was.
Yeah, but then we did, but with that refinancing and going through all of that, we got that covenant, we got rid of that
You
covenant.
eliminated,
Yeah,
you
and so-
refunded it, so you eliminated it.
Yeah, we refunded it and it ended up making it so that I think one of the things they were looking at is in the future, knowing that we needed future bonding, how do we get through that kind of impediment? But I know that was one part of their analysis.
So in my opinion, it's my first meeting, and I'm not comfortable with 40 million yet. There are other ways to finance, and maybe this is the best way. I'm just not comfortable yet. And so I have to do my homework, and I promised the finance committee I'd do it, and bring it back to the board. And, for example, if we sell 40 million, that's 3 years, and it means 3 years of projects, if we can do all those projects. And it eliminates, for example, our chance to get an SRF loan, which I think we've got a probability of getting one. They're 2%, in low issuance costs. There is a lead time of about a year. You have to spend some money to get it. You've got to do certain studies. But it's a possibility, and if we can get them, I want them. It's the best way to finance. I don't know a better way, except maybe a grant, which aren't available, quite frankly. So, but I can understand that if we sell bonds, Greg's given us the right skinny there, that we don't want to sell 1 year and have to run back and sell another year. So I don't think we're approving the amount of the bonds tonight.
No, correct.
But we are saying what to do, how to do the timing. I looked at your cash flow, Schedule 4, the fold-out page. And you see, 40 million keeps us way over 40 million through the fiscal, except for 2 months. At the end of the year. You see what I mean? So we've got some extra money. I'm looking at the 41 cash balance, 141 cash balance. That's kind of a key number there. And so we do need money, right? You got to have some money. You're worried about November, and according to cash flows, and we believe cash flows. There's been a lot of thought into them.
But we're not selling bonds for a cash flow. We're selling bonds for a project. Is the bonds going to somehow supplement cash flow?
What they do is they pay capital costs, and so our reserves get drawn down as we build projects.
Right.
And so all of our bond proceeds have to go to capital projects. And bond council and ourselves haven't certified that.
And if we don't use them all,
If it
they roll
doesn't, somebody
over
goes to
into
jail.
another bond. We can roll
Like
them
San
over.
Francisco.
When we refer to the cash flow considerations, it's just that. Obviously, the primary purpose of the bonds is a more of a long-term, 2-year plus picture. But there is a basic need. There's a basic near-term cash flow given the district's current financial condition that does require some minimum amount of bond financing to keep us fully solvent and meeting at least the minimum fund balance targets that we've set. So that obviously is not, that 3 years worth of capital funding is definitely somewhat in excess of that. But when we say cash flow, what we're really meaning is that if we receive no new capital funding too much later than October, we will actually run into near-term cash flow issues as far as funding.
Let's call it a capital cash flow.
Yeah, and that's a near-term consideration, as I would call it, and some of the factors Tom is raising, like consideration of more of a mixed approach to the financing, is like a mid to long-term consideration. So
It's longer term.
yeah, definitely.
The question before us is, should we negotiate with the bond council and FA that we use? They're familiar with, well, they did the work, They got those documents. Now, we own them too. But they're familiar with them, and somebody new is going to have to get up to speed with them. And, so that's the good side. I think the fees they're charging seem to be reasonable. You can compare them.
That's what I was trying to do, compare some of these other issuances.
And but there's the perception there, and we've had complaints about issuing sole source projects. So how does the board feel about this? I think we could do an RFP, a rapid RFP process. Maybe take it through the finance committee to be approved. To be approved by the board.
Is it a possibility we could get a better rate out of our existing bond people if we went to an RFP? If they had to negotiate or I mean.
They're obviously, it's more competitive, if nothing else. And I can't speak for them, obviously, but I think that we have a good enough working relationship and experience that I would expect that they would submit if there was a competitive RFP process. Again, I can't speak for them, but that would be my conjecture.
Let me ask a question. Is there another piece of the puzzle that needs to have some direction first? Like, are we going to ask for less on the first round and do the state revolving fund? Is that something that we're really interested in doing? Because then maybe we only ask for 30.
Well, exactly. I think,
and then you have to do another RFP if it's just from these guys.
Here's what we could do. We could do an RFP at this amount, and then quote a fee of this amount of bonds, this amount of bonds, and this amount of bonds. We've submitted responses to that plenty of times. Give us your 3 fees. Basically, they can work these fees out in 2 hours, 3 hours.
And are these the same bond council that we did the 100 potential million revenue bond? This is the
what?
Bond council.
When Brett was here.
When Brett Richards was here.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
So this is their 3rd stab. If we
Jones Hall did all of the, even did an initial bank loan years ago. The FA was not here. Well, I don't know. Maybe the same FA was
Yeah,
well.
but the original, the one with the
Southwest
quote,
Securities
yeah.
is who they had.
Oh, right.
That was they were the underwriters. But the 100 million or the up to 100 million, that one, I don't believe they were paid.
They were never paid for.
They were never paid for any
No,
of that.
this is contingent upon the sale of bonds.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
You don't sell
They did all
bonds.
that
at
work for
money.
free.
Right.
And their fee is contingent upon the sale of bonds.
Yeah, and that was, I think that's been a point to clarify, and please understand, I don't try to oversell the current team, but I do think it's important to note, because the fees can seem, it's a lot of money, there's no easy way to put it. They put in a tremendous amount of upfront at-risk work. They don't get paid if the issuance doesn't go through. So, for example, Jones Hall, I would venture to guess, spent a significant amount of time working with the district on that, under our request and contract to support that planned bond issuance that you're referring to, Pam. And at the end of the day, they were paid 0. They walked away, said, okay.
that happens everywhere.
Correct. My point being.
We're not any special.
Yeah, so they are, they're at risk. They come back again when we ask them for further assistance on the most recent issuance. This one goes through, it's successful. Obviously, they get the standard, they've got what I would call fairly standard and relatively competitive payment for their services. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I'm not aware of any negative marks against either one of these parties in terms of their performance in the past for the district. That's maybe all I'm saying.
Their payment's a one-time, they're paid one time and
The
then.
deal closes, right? Yeah.
Close. Do they help with anything ongoing, or are they out of the picture?
You can ask them, listen, you can ask them
During the
questions for
process.
years.
Oh, okay.
No, afterwards.
They will,
It's very competitive.
no, they do,
I asked the questions.
no, they do
Continuous.
continuing disclosure. I think we require them to do the continuing disclosure requirements, don't we?
Right.
I think we-
No, they don't
The
do
trustee will
continuing
do that.
disclosure. The trustee does
The
that.
trustee
for us.
does that, but.
We could hire them to do that, and they would do a more comprehensive job than the trustee as far as tracking significant events, yes, and reporting them,
Technical questions, you definitely can call them up.
yes.
Now, you can't ask them for 10 days' work.
I know, I
but-
call them up a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
They are not one of the consultants who will charge by the hour for every call that they
That's
take
right.
from you. They do that all, Rob, as part of the
Part of it.
day.
That's- yeah.
Use them next time.
Okay, staff, is it a problem if we go to an RFP? Can,
I think it's workable. I think if you can provide us direction on the two items, and actually, let me modify that. I think what we're hearing is, first of all, the short answer is yes. The RFP process can work, and I think that if we were to direct the RFP process with simply a slightly more compressed timeline, maintain the October funding target, and then rather than specify the dollar amount, the RFP will reflect, I think, two things at this point. One is the aspect you just described, Tom, which is it would ask them for fee schedules based on 3 likely issuances amounts. And I think the other thing that it would ask them for that's not readily addressed here is, and this is more for the financial advisor role than the bond counsel role, is that we would want to anticipate that that team would assist us in answering the questions that you've teed up, Tom, which is, are there some good alternatives to this? Do we do initial bonding for the first 2 years and then look at SRF loans? Because there are trade-offs in all of these. There are cost of issuance trade-offs, there are interest rate risk trade-offs, there are long-term administrative load trade-offs between these different options. So my point is, the RFP would include a scope of services specifically for the financial advisor role that dedicates some time to helping the district take at least an initial cut at those to confirm that we think the 2-year funding target is good for the first bond issuance. So I hope that makes sense. I see no reason RFP process can't work. And again, I would be surprised if we didn't receive a submittal from our administration team.
Of course, yeah.
and they would
obviously-
submit separately, of course.
Mhm.
Now, an alternative is that I could work with staff, because Wendy knows most of this, and I know fees and things like that, so but let's put down optional services.
Okay, there you go.
And I can help you with the RFP,
Okay.
because we get it out soon. And this recommends, remember, this is what, transparency, this is that transparency.
Thank you.
I think, for our first meeting here,
Sure.
I think we ought to. I feel better about it.
Mhm.
There's no
It's
risk
a
that
lot of money.
really
and
to
expense.
It's a big
for
amount of
everybody.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we just tell everybody that here's our time frame, we're not looking at the red one, we're looking at having you do it in the blue time. And the blue time frame is part of the RFP.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, and I think that we would want to, obviously, scale the discussion a little bit, but should the board go that direction, we would want to simply move very tightly on this. And I think
A very what?
move very quickly on
Oh, we have to.
Yeah.
Which may involve that the decision to choose the service providers and approve a contract might have to be scheduled at a special meeting to
Okay.
keep the time
Absolutely.
moving.
But it's a pretty, that would be an important enough item that would, certainly.
I would like I would request the board to authorize me to be on the interview committee.
On the what?
On the interview committee.
My motion that you
Sure.
are on the interview committee.
Do we need like a peer thing for that?
Do you do that, like we did when we did the
Well,
attorney?
Well, I would,
I mean, for your
I would
job.
suggest, so for example, I mean, Tom, your role on the selection committee or what have you would be an offset of your decision on the action before you, which is, you know, the direction on going to an RFP process. So I guess my suggestion is if you can provide us direction on that first part, the aspects of how we best carry it out would be sort of the next set of items. So, for example, assigning or deciding who you would like to have lead the process and all
That
that.
could be part of the
Well, and
finance
staff,
committee.
you know, and did you have somebody from another district or?
Well, when we hired, right, we had a peer review, and I'm wondering if we should do a community or some other person just besides Tom.
Well, let's just say you guys, I feel like the discussion's getting a little ahead of itself.
Okay.
You're talking about how best to do the interviews and so forth once
We
we
can
get
figure it out later.
proposals. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we want to get going on it.
Yeah, no. So my only point in mentioning that is if there's clarity on the direction of going to an RFP, then by all means, go ahead and assign the responsible board members this evening and we'll get rolling.
Okay, is there clarity on going for an RFP through bond council?
I think so. I think we always go.
I think we all agree.
Okay, very good.
Payers.
Okay?
So I'll second that motion. Is that a motion? Michael, you need a
We're
motion?
just.
I
trying to
motion that we go
consensus.
ahead with the RFP.
Yeah,
Do
an RFP.
RFP.
Direction.
Direction.
It's direction.
Directions to staff.
So you don't need.
To proceed with an RFP
Or three
with the,
three possible,
And if it-
Yeah.
and three possible,
Fine.
three possible
Up to
bond
three.
amounts, up to 40 and then
Up to three.
up to
up to
three.
three options, yeah, but 40 is the
No.
cap? You want 40 to be the cap?
No,
No.
we want to go beyond that. But yeah, if you want to say, that's 40 proceeds, by the way, so the bond issue is, as Frank pointed out, 42.8.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
it'd be close to 43.
That's what they sell, that's what we pay interest on.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
And we will,
I feel better about that.
we will work with the finance committee and
Finance
with
committee, and
Tom.
with the
and-
president board, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, and the award of the RFP would be back to the full board for
Mhm.
full
It
review.
may be a special meeting.
And it may be a special.
Sure.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, good. Item
But
11.
we need to vote. We need to vote.
No, it's just another direction.
Well, I think it,
Well, let's have a vote.
we got a motion.
We have a motion and a second.
I second it.
And it's a positive thing.
Let's do that. That way it
So,
shows up.
all in favor?
Aye.
Point of information,
Unanimously.
are you voting on the motion to appoint Director Gaffney to the interview committee? Because I didn't hear a motion.
No, there was a motion
To go to the
to
RFPs
go
for
proceed
bond
with an
council.
RFP for bond counsel and financial advisors,
Okay.
including three bond amounts.
Up to three options, yeah.
Three options for bond amounts. And
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gaffney would
No.
be helping
And then the
staff.
board can just direct.
That was Board Steenager.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, 11, consideration of approving an amendment to the agreement with HF and AH Consultants for the wastewater rate study they did. And this is in an amount, well, it's just, this is the exact amount, 10,848.
Correct.
Over and above.
Yeah, over and above the original contracted amount. The work on this is all completed. There's no further ongoing activity. And I'll walk you through just briefly the staff report and hand back, but basically, the executing the rate study work really in the, I would say, sort of the last 20% of the effort overall, or the last 20% of the timeline in which work was going on. Not totally unexpected, but there was additional, basically just additional requirements on HF and H's time to address, basically normal needs, questions, what about a different alternative, some additional board outreach to go through, pros and cons and the basis for their analysis. So there was an unfortunate in terms of project management and timeliness of awareness, which there's really no good excuse for it, just how it unfolded. This issue of the overrun did not come to our attention as soon as it should have. It was explained in the staff report, basically the building got somewhat behind, and when we finally got the final building and realized where things were at, we sat down, and we knew that there were some additional work. We knew that there had been an additional board meeting and so forth, and we were essentially waiting for, for the invoices to discuss and see what the impact would be. So when we finally got the complete picture, Wendy and myself worked with John and Rick on their team to review the work and go through and identify where the additional efforts were, and we tried to summarize that in the staff report. It also points out, we did begin this whole exercise with an approximate estimate of about a $50,000 cost for the rate study, which for a fairly comprehensive rate study with rate structure changes and a 5-year schedule, we felt was generally within market averages. They came in with an initial budget that was quite lean. We felt, okay, they're going to be able to really jump through this pretty quickly because they're fairly familiar with the district. That didn't quite play out because of the additional efforts. But that's what you have in front of you. It is a cost overrun or an extra effort, an extra compensation request in the amount of $10,848. It would bring the total cost of the completed rate study to $52,278. And again, relatively close to our original estimate, but not exactly how we expected to get there. And I will stop there, and we can answer your questions and hand back to the board.
Okay, their contract was a not to exceed, so we don't necessarily have to pay this.
Correct. So,
And where did the original estimate? Did we make that estimate? Did our staff?
Staff,
Okay.
yeah.
And were there other consultants that bid on this?
No. So the history is, we tried to kind of summarize the history, but it's very brief. So for the newer board members, once we had decided that the rate study was the next step, we started to go down the process of an RFP, and we prepared a full draft RFP, and in the final discussion on that, the direction was to see if we could negotiate directly with HF&H and arrive at what we hoped would be a much more competitive cost. We did that, and their original contract cost was deemed pretty, quite competitive for the scope of work. So we started down the RFP process, and then we changed direction for what I think was a valid reason. There was an expectation that they could be quite efficient on this work. So we then did a sole source negotiation with them, Tom, and then awarded that contract. So we never did get submittals from other parties to be picked.
But the original contract does say not to exceed $50,000. We just have the amendment here.
Not to exceed.
No,
41.
yeah, thank you. Not to exceed the 41,430.
Oh, okay. Based on their bid, or based on their estimate.
Proposal.
The negotiated proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of my concerns has been how we deal with our consultants and contracts. And we had that one for BMC that was not to exceed 800,000, I'm sorry, 80,000, was it 80,000, and they went to 84, but 70,000 went to 74, whatever that, I forgot. What was that?
It was we had put an RFP out that had a not to exceed for their professional services. So they haven't finished that contract yet. I think what you're recalling, Frank, is we did end up awarding a contract that was a dollar amount higher than the original RFP.
74,000 more, because we had put a not to exceed 800,000, and 7 bidders came in under 800,000, and they came in 874,000.
Technically, they're not bidders, because these were professional design services that we were contracting for, so, yeah.
So if you were a contractor building my house,
Yeah,
and you gave me a price,
yeah.
you wouldn't get paid. I mean, either that or you'd have to, I don't know. So that's just an issue with me. I'm not quite sure how How we make it clear when we say not to exceed, it's really not to exceed, I don't know.
Well, what about the extra services? So they did have an extra meeting. Meetings are expensive. And they said they worked 38 hours and 50-something hours, or something.
36 and 61.
Well, my guess is this came out of, they presented the rate study with recommendations, and then we, as a board and individual board members asked, well, what about how much would, if we took the percentage increase down, how would this affect it, how would this affect? So there was a lot more back and forth in the last days or weeks than they probably anticipated. I guess the question is just whether, in my mind, the question is whether they had the duty to go, wait a minute, the meter is running for you guys on this, and we should,
So were we told that?
no.
Yeah, well, we
I
had,
thought, a bid is a bid. I mean,
let me be clear, it's not a bid.
Well, I mean,
So
it's-
let's just be, they're working
the
under a
entire
contract.
Total amount.
Yeah, they did have a contract not to exceed. We had indications at the time of the draft, somewhere between the draft and final report, that were indicating in the, like a little over $5,000 at that point that they had already identified. And we felt at that time, at the pace that activity was moving and so forth, that was like, okay, that's going to be acceptable. We can work with that. It was a small enough amount. We said, okay, let's keep an eye on things. Then again, what made the timing, difficult or more was the delay in getting the fuller picture because of them. They basically had a gap in their invoicing, as best we can tell. When it finally caught up, we were finally getting the full picture. So that is a project management responsibility of the consulting firm. I would say though that generally speaking, we were aware that they were doing work beyond. Yeah, they were holding long, fairly long conference calls with board members to go through things. We had asked them to run the extra analyses for alternatives.
They did that several times, I think, different.
That's a third study they've done for us. So they've made well over $100,000 off this agency now. Probably probably 120,000. They did 20,000 for the little hookup rate study. That was about 20,000 or so. Then they did our previous rate study the year before, and I'm not sure, I can't remember what they
2 years
paid for
ago.
that. 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So they had a pretty good handle on the district on how it was going to all come together.
Yeah.
And we thought there might be some at one time, when we said, look, we told you to negotiate with them, we thought there might be some savings since they were so familiar with what went on here.
Right.
I guess there were no savings.
Right. What we don't know though is we don't know if we had gone out to an RFP and we'd gotten 4 or 5 firms and selected one. We don't really know what the outcome would have been. I can't tell you. So I think that relative to the cost of these services, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if you were to look at the series of studies that, for example, I think Las Colinas is just now finishing up,
This was 24,000.
they're approaching between their rate structure study and extra steps. And I apologize, I'm mixing up Las Colinas and Novato, but one of them, they've got to be between $50,000 and $100,000 on this current study, and they haven't adopted new rates yet. So my point
Must be
is,
Novato.
yeah, these are $50,000 for a 5-year rate study is a very reasonable.
Las Colinas, I used their study that night as a comparison. They paid 24,000, I think, for their rate study.
San Rafael paid 24,000,
I did.
and they weren't looking at it.
I'll look through my records because Judy Schreibman gave me their whole what they
Well,
did.
yeah, I don't know what Las Colinas paid.
Las Colinas did multiple studies. They did a study on rate structure recommendations alone before even moving into a rate study.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
So you have to add the two together.
How much did they pay? Do you remember?
Not,
Yeah, I don't have it.
but for some background for Tom and for Michael, the first rate study that we hired, this firm, they did a hybrid model. And so they went from a flat rate that we did the water-based hybrid model. So they generated the flow-based hybrid model for a 5-year study. And then when we came back for this study, we didn't go hybrid flow-based. We only changed the multifamily and did that. So it really wasn't.
It was a different animal.
It was a different animal at the time they got the direction that we were going with flat rate, with multifamily. So.
That study that I did for San Rafael, I'm pretty sure I did 18,500, and I wound up 24,000 for exactly the same reasons. A bunch of additional meetings, and a bunch of different ideas. And Pamela, you had some ideas. Remember that you wanted them to try good ideas that resulted in changes.
There were a couple times where they had to go back and if we're going to reduce everything by 2% or everything by, I want 5% across the board, and that all.
Or reduce the reserve fund.
Yeah, and flip that, and there was some major.
We did, we tried to make the point in the staff report, we did review the work and we did feel that it was valuable, it was value-added work.
It was.
Call it that. I mean, could we have said, no, don't do that? Yes, we, as you all know, I mean, you're in a fairly dynamic situation at that point. You're trying to keep the discussion going. You're getting new questions asked and posed by board members, and you want to be responsive to those. So in my experience, I have done a number of these before I was in public sector, so I've been on both sides of this process. This is a situation where you have pretty good certainty up until about 80% of the work, and then near the end, as you sort of alluded to, Tom, once people start to see the draft outcome, that's when the discussion really kicks into high gear, and people start asking questions. So this is water under the bridge, but I will just throw this out to the board for future consideration, and I realize there are pros and cons to this. It is not. It can be a useful practice at times to simply anticipate in the initial contract that you will have a 10% contingency for change order. And it can only be accessed with written authorization. But that way, there's recognition that you have some uncertainty as to what the final effort's going to look like within a certain amount. And rather than wait for that to happen and then deal with it, you simply say, okay, this might be $100,000 to $110,000 effort. We're going to call it 100. We're going to put some money aside here that only gets used as signed authorization for extra identified work. So that's water under the bridge. That's something for a future day. But I guess my main 2 points are we do think the final, three main points actually, not to lose sight of the big picture. The final product to the district was, I think, very high quality, and it very, very well withstood, the scrutiny that it had to go through as being the financial foundation for the rates. They were very flexible, very responsive in working with the district on this. And I think that we've ended up with a high quality product at what I would call still a reasonable rate overall. I will not make excuses for the project management gaps. That was on
So
them.
who's our project manager to execute, when we execute contracts?
With
Who's
this
on our
one,
side to make sure that the contractors we hire are performing and meeting?
we
whatever
generally
requirements?
assign, depending on the nature of the project, Frank, we typically assign an individual to be the project manager, just to manage that project. Basically, in this case, this was Wendy and myself, just because of the nature of the work. I had to stay fairly involved. So that we are the ones that are responsible for managing this project.
But they didn't say to us, oh, by the way, Greg, you're within $2,000 of your limit. They didn't tell us that.
Yeah, no. Again, they did when we were between the draft and final study. They did inform us, hey, it looks like we're headed for about a $5,000 cost overrun for extra effort. And then it was like, okay, we can manage that. Let's talk about it. And then by the time we got the final, things had moved quite a bit past that. So it's not a stellar.
The worst thing you could have done is say, hey, we're out of money, and we think we fulfilled the contract. We've got a draft. Read in. Here it is. Here's the study. Oh, you want to change something.
And it's
authorize some more money, or I won't do anything. See, we were up against, didn't we have a postponement? We have a deadline, August 10, you have to get your, would they be, would they think we were cheap if we split the difference with them, or something like that?
Well, interestingly enough, we arrived at this with some back and forth with them. Yeah,
This is the
I
split.
mean, it was higher?
yeah, this is the split.
How much higher?
Double, approximately.
Double what?
Double
Roughly,
the 10, 08.
the exact figure I don't recall. Do you know offhand what we ballpark?
Roughly 15,000, so.
Great.
Yeah, so when we first, Wendy went through the first cut analysis of where the extra work was compared to the billings, she and I went through that. And we had a conference call with John, and then we had an in-person meeting with John and Rick. And on the basis of those 2 or 3 discussions, we arrived at the 10,848 as what we firmly identify as valuable, work.
So I just want to be really clear. So did we not put in, did we miss something to put in a contract that we're not going to exceed any amount, period? And that way, if they go over hours, then that's on them. Is that what we failed to do? I'm trying to figure out if we could have done this differently or
Well,
better.
the contract has very clear terms and conditions, and this is just a situation of events got ahead of staying in really strict adherence with the contract.
In other words, a contract that has that this is your fee. It's got a not to exceed amount, so it has it in there.
So we're being nice.
Well,
And
we haven't been nice yet.
Well, that's why,
We're thinking about
that's
it.
why we've been talking about this a long time.
The contract included their fee schedule from the proposal, which outlines specific tasks, the specific hours, and amounts. What we're saying is the district added more tasks than what was on their proposal, so then they exceeded the hours.
So it didn't come back to the board and say, hey, we need extra money for this contract, we need to amend
It
it.
didn't, and probably it would have been inopportune at
Yeah,
the time.
it's too much,
and
too fast.
Under the
All right.
fire.
I think the question is whether at this point we want to sort of pay them for the value of services provided, and particularly if you think about this being a 5-year rate study, if we amortize it over 5 years, we have a lot of folks who come in and say, we've given ratepayers money because the properties where the EDU count was not properly counted. I mean, I sometimes feel like we're Santa Claus. And so in this case, where I say we actually can value these services. And I want to know what you think, Tom, because this is your business. Does this happen a lot? Do you think this is still a reasonable amount of money to pay for these services?
Well, 52,000, is right in there, I would say. It could have been less, but they changed our, billing system. That's a difficulty. When then you've got to reformulate all your estimates, and you got to, for example, we changed the flow allowance for non-residential. So that means you got to go through all the records, to see exactly how many EDUs you have. So the amount, could be appropriate. It could have been done for less, maybe not. The one thing that a rate consultant cannot do is stop under fire. And so they acted professionally in, we need this information. You requested something, you personally, and it was good. And they said, they can't say, well, we're out of money. No, you have to do it.
So that money there is my fault.
So-
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so that comes out,
Now that you're in
So, I mean, I did make
Yeah, now that she's on the board.
But there were requests from board members about changing the analysis and flip-flopping and then taking money out of the reserves. And even though those were things that seemed like easy fixes, they did, as Tom said, they did take a lot of time, and it did recalculate and cost their services. It did cost time and money.
So the answer is, it's up to us.
I see this all the time with the contractors that I work for, doing their work, where at the last second, before that final inspection, they got all these change orders, and you got the people in the front line who are trying to get all this work done under a deadline all of a sudden, and then after the final inspection, you go back and you pick up the dead bodies and figure out where the change orders are and what was reasonable and what was not reasonable. And there's, and it sounds like this is even a negotiated settlement, that it was actually significantly more than this. And they said, yeah, you're right, but then maybe they don't want to work for us in the future, and if we're really happy with their work. And I wasn't on the board at the time, but I watched all their presentations, and I thought they were very clear and concise, and I liked them.
If you called them up and asked them a question, would they send you a bill for an hour?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, John Farkoff and Rick Simonson, my experience, because we as Frank, as you mentioned earlier, my first work with them directly was what I think was a pretty fast effort at the connection fee update, and I think they really pulled it out for us to get a connection fee update done for $20,000. I think was quite a bargain. They did it very quickly. I consider them to be very responsive. When we were going through the early stages of do we want to do an RFP, and we were talking to them, the short answer is, John, is they are very professional and they're very willing to help. They recognize us as an important client. They take us I think they take that relationship very seriously.
That was a question that I wanted to answer by going through their detailed billing. And I specifically looked at those calls because there were times that we called with quick questions and just a quick exchange that were unscheduled, and they just took our call, gave us the answers. There were no charges for any of that. The phone calls that we were charged for were scheduled conference calls that resulted in a work product coming out of it, or a decision point that had to be made.
Did they have good records? Did they keep good billing records, do you think?
Yes, other than the delay in us getting the final information, yes.
There is a consideration too. There's a number of changes to our rate structure. And don't think it's over yet. We're likely to get calls from businesses because they got the largest increase.
Yeah, especially
And so we may need, some help with these fellows. So maybe what we ought to do is say, well, we'll pay this dorm cost overrun, but you may have to help us with a few questions, and we don't want to see another bill.
I think I would expect John to be pretty responsive to that. I just don't have any reason to think he would. Yeah.
So we're buying something for him.
I think it makes a good working relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been on both.
So let's get a motion.
I motion, it sounds like a reasonable thing to do and amortize over 5 years. It's $2,000 a year.
So you will move to?
I move to approve amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement between RVSD and H&F Consultants LLC for the 2004 wastewater utility service rate study in the amount of $10,848.
I will second. Can we put a friendly amendment that they will be accessible for?
Just
Can we add that?
Yeah.
We can be his direction to staff, I guess.
Yeah, directions.
Yeah.
We trust that they will help us.
Yeah. Well, we
Other
will
implementation.
we will communicate that very clearly to John.
Okay. Tell him we appreciate his work, and that, even though he's a damn competitor.
It's a generous act, as you're.
It's a really tough job.
Your first board.
Okay. Oh my God.
So did we take a vote on
Oh,
that?
yeah, we take a vote on that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. So, thank you, board members. 12. Okay, RFP for engineering services for the force main appurtenance projects. And these are corrosion control projects?
Yes, a combination of corrosion control and air valves. This is really, really important aspect of some upgrades that came out of the INP work. These are not the biggest dollar amounts for capital projects, but the importance of the corrosion protection and the air release systems on the force mains makes them one of those items where minor, regular investments are a huge insurance against risk of major problems with much more expensive problems, I should say, with force mains themselves. So we tried to make the staff report a little bit informative as to what it is we're even talking about, because we don't spend a lot of time talking about corrosion protection systems and air release systems, but they're really quite simple in concept. You have a figure attached to the staff report that Claire Dessing referred to. The force mains are just the backbone of the district's conveyance system. Without the force mains and the pump stations, all that gravity flow, wastewater that comes down to us has no place to go. The figure you have shows you the extent of what we call really the primary force mains. Force mains are, just as a way of background, they're pumped under pressure, so they're more like a water pipe that's operating at 40, 50, 60 psi, not gravity. That means they're a completely different design of pipe. They experience much different stresses and service condition issues. And when they fail, it tends to be pretty ugly. And there has been, force main failures are not unusual, and they are usually really, really unpleasant. And this district has actually had one in the last, whatever it is, 3 to 4 years, 5 years.
Is that the one in Kentfield?
Yeah, Kentfield. And as we were rounding up the INP, interestingly enough, there was basically a rash of very significant failures around the Bay Area of force mains, and it was a very instructive reminder because these failures are typically due to relatively minor items being neglected, but then the failure that occurs, it's like when you shut off the water in your sprinkler system because you think you need it, and then the house catches on fire. When it was just a critical, so the point is, these are very, very important, but relatively, in the big scheme of things, relatively low-cost capital items. They were identified in the INP. They are scheduled in the budget and in the capital improvements plan. And what we're doing is, the proposal is to take a phased approach to upgrading these appurtenances. It is very clear from the work of the INP that these aspects of the force mains have really not gotten the attention that they should over at least the last 10 years or longer. And we know that because essentially air valves were totally inoperable. Cathodic test stations have gone missing. We can't even locate them in some cases. So we've made strides addressing some of those immediate deficiencies, but what this project will do is the RFP would seek services for the design of replacement air valve assemblies for a portion of the most critical aspects of the force mains, and design of a combination of what are called test stations, which are real simple assemblies. It would literally be like you'd see a little manhole out there about that big of the street. And what it would have is it would have a conductive connection to the force main itself, to the metal of the force main. And there's a series of these along the force main. And with the right instrumentation, what you do is you induce a current and you confirm that there's what we call electrical conductivity along the force main. The reason that's so important is your corrosion protection system. It's actually pretty fascinating stuff. You have these big buried zinc anode beds buried into the soil, and they are electrically connected by a cable to the force main. And without getting into the science of corrosion, what happens is instead of the pipe corroding due to the salts and so forth, the anodes corrode on purpose. That's why they're referred to as, you hear the term sacrificial anodes, because that's what happens. But the anodes degrade and they have to be replaced over time because they're literally corroded. So that's the type of stuff that this project will be replacing. The air valve assemblies are a little bit different. You can see them if you walk along some of the major force mains, like out by right behind Jason's Restaurant, thank you, which is where our largest force main is routed. They're just big manhole assemblies, and when you open them up, it's very simple. It's a high point in the force main. Because it's a high point, gases and air that get into the system inevitably, that's where they want to collect. If they don't have a regular release, number one, they can set up really aggressive corrosion situations, because these are like very caustic and gases that we're talking about. They can be a safety hazard because you're talking about sewer gases, which can be explosive. And they put the operation of the force main at risk. Because think about it, it's like a pipe and it gets airbound after a while. And all of those are common sources of failure of the force mains. The corrosion protection goes neglected, and then suddenly the pipe wall is gone, and one day there's a high pressure surge and it ruptures. The air valves contribute to that by making sure they're just little automatic assemblies that are about yay big. They sit under the manhole. The ones that we currently have are the originals, and they're not that great. They not relative to today's standards, and they're built out of in some cases literally like Schedule 40 PVC pipe, buried 9 feet underground to a 42-inch pressure line. So it's
original when? Sorry.
1980s.
Okay.
1980s. So. That's probably about as much detail as I wanted.
Great, you've convinced us. I mean, yeah, we can be against this.
I can put it this way. There's almost
sometimes
geeks us into submission. I have my professional background. I think the board knows this. Before I got into utility management, a lot of what I did was conveyance design. So this is
engineer.
Yeah. These are some of, in terms of dollar value, risk avoidance benefit, cost benefit, these are some really, really great projects to get knocked out. So the action is consideration of issuing an RFP for these design services. The next steps would be to bring back to the board the results of the proposals, seek approval for a contract, and then go forward with the specified work, which is addressing a very specific set of areas, as you can see on the map. So I'll stop there. I know that's a little, as you said, it's probably a lot more detail than you want, but
I have a couple of points.
we'll go from there.
One is, can we get a standard designs for both these?
We'd sure like to, Tom, yes. That would
So
be,
in other words, this study can get us the standard.
absolutely, yeah.
And then we'll stick it in all over.
And as we work our way through the rest of the force main network, we would just duplicate the standard. Yes.
But this one we have to.
No, but this isn't rocket science. This is not
It's
complicated.
been
So
done
we-
all the time.
we won't have to keep designing
New
these
since
things, that's
1980.
This is, these are fairly simple design projects, is what I want to stress.
This
They're
is
not-
really interesting. I've been here 4 years, and this is like learning something that I didn't even know existed.
Well, like you said, if you were to go walk by one of these things in the street, you would think nothing of it. You might see a little iron manhole about that big, and if you were to open it up, the test station, you just would look like nothing.
So out of all the projects we're moving forward, if you rated it on a 1 to 10 scale, would this be at the highest to get moving?
For value and criticality, I'd put it at the top.
Okay.
Is this one of those that remember you said just a few, I think you said some percent of the projects constitute a huge amount of the risk?
20% of the project, 80% of the risk, something like
Something
that.
like
It's the
that,
typical
yeah.
So this
80/20 rule.
isn't
Yeah.
causing the,
These, yeah, and it's the nice part about these is they're not, again, I know it's all of the dollars are important, but relative to the overall capital program, these are some of the smallest projects, but really providing tremendous risk reduction and benefit. So.
And as part of the IAMB, it's basically required by the Regional Water Quality Board, or
Yeah,
we told them we're going to do it.
These are all
It all
standard
is.
projects.
these are things that we should do.
Avoid
So
lines
the-
behind
the-
basins
Yeah.
for a while, where I could have
Actually,
explosive gas buildup.
Yeah. One last,
That's not-
Is it 100,000
Just for engineering.
estimated for this? Does that include project management? when the work's gonna be done, or are we gonna have our own inspector on the job?
The 100,000 is for design services only, Frank. We would come back with, or am I saying that?
You're saying it correctly,
Thank
yes.
you. The 100,000 is for the design services.
Okay.
Then we would come back separately to the board with construction bid estimates and a separate action by the board for actual construction.
What's the 550? 550?
That's construction and engineering management.
There you go.
Construction management.
It's
Just
all
building
in-
it.
That's the total project.
That's not, is that everything that's gonna be done?
Yes, and not, that's not what you would be providing direction on this evening, but it's just the RFP for engineering services. They would go complete the design, and we would come back with a construction bidding process to the board. The current estimate for all of that is the $550,000. All you're moving towards this evening with the RFP is eventual securing of what we expect to be about $100,000.
So it's about 20% of the project is in design?
Design, that's correct, yeah.
And then we're still gonna have someone, a project manager?
Yeah, it's standard. We will always want to have at least one person in the district essentially acting as our project manager, but there's no, maybe what you're referring to is,
What we're physically putting in,
yeah.
what's gonna?
Well, we'll be inspecting.
Who's gonna watch that? Who's gonna
Okay,
watch
most likely on a job like this, I think given the nature of this work, we have two options, but this is a project I could see certainly a combination of either of district inspection forces and limited outside inspection. And I say that mostly because of the nature of the work is small enough that our guys could probably work it in, but we could probably support the inspection.
Okay, so would be completed the end, when would it be completed by?
This is
June, July, I think.
Yeah, so they,
Okay.
June, July,
Really quick.
the new year.
Oh, next year?
Yeah.
So a couple, 6 months or so through design.
Well, it says 18 months.
Is there any chance that our staff could build these? I mean,
No, and part of the reason why is what we realized when they did the IMP, our consultant team, the specialists, went out to try to assess some of these test stations. And what we realized, and they had a backhoe and all that, and what we realized is that the force mains are typically quite deep. And so to work on them, even to just go down and tap on a new air valve system or whatever, you end up with a significant excavation that you have to shore up and you have to de-water. That was the other big effort. We found that not virtually, a fair amount of our force main network is, you can tell by the map, it's in the lowest part of the district in the tidal zone. So if you dig down more than about 3 or 4 feet, you're suddenly dealing with groundwater. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is it's really beyond the capabilities of our guys. Yeah, too complicated for our forces to try to do.
Mr. Lamb, do you have any comments on anything? You're our public.
No. Although it's very fascinating.
It is. Yeah, this is, something that often gets overlooked in my districts that I work with. And so I'm a real fan of preventive maintenance. We would save millions and an overflow. Who needs it?
There was, over on page 7 of the 11, it says task 3 design. A is 90% design, B is 100% design. Ooh, what's the difference? I was trying to figure out.
That's a good question, Frank. Those are pretty, typically what's done in the design process is what's called, think of 90% as ideally the consultant is bringing that to you and saying, we think we're done. We're ready, this job is pretty close to finished. And the 90% submittal to the client, in this case the district, is our opportunity to review front to back their final work and take one more cut and saying, hold it, tweak this, adjust that. And then the 100% is basically the bid documents that are going to be issued. So there's a little difference there, but it's just a standard term that the industry uses. Yeah.
So they're actually preparing the RFP too?
No, staff will prepare the RFP.
But it's all the
construction bid document?
Yeah, they'll
Yes,
prepare.
consultants prepare the construction bid documents, which are the drawing plans, contract specifications, and the appendices.
Okay. Board members? Motion? Pamela,
I'll call the motion.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess it should be, the motion should be authorized the general manager to issue a request for proposals for design and engineering services during construction, 2015, 2014-15 enforcement projects in amount not to, amount estimated at 100,000, that's not to exceed. That was the motion, right?
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
good.
That was easy.
That's what I was saying.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to 13.
It is a tricky one.
Discussion and directions to staff on investment strategy for the California Employee Retirement Benefit Trust Fund for OPEB.
Yeah, lots of acronyms on this one. So this is another item that originally has its roots in the outcome of the last audit. There was one of the recommendations, is that correct? Okay, it's not, it wasn't the last audit, thank you. It's just considered, again, one of those best industry practices now. The issue of public employee retirement benefits, as everyone knows, is quite front and center these days. And the OPEB, EE, stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. So for some of the newer board members, basically think of that as everything other than the CalPERS retirement pension or payments that you get. So if we have labor commitments that address health care after retirement or after your departure from the district, for example, that after retirement, that would be another post-employment benefit. We have always, or I should say certainly in recent times, we have tracked and have set aside funds for these future obligations. But the direction we're looking to go is to make that a little more formal and a little very clearly delineated. And the way you do that is by essentially setting up a trust that's administered through CalPERS, and it shows that you very clearly have funded and set aside monies for those future obligations. The district has relatively modest OPB obligations relative, if you've been paying attention to this discussion the last few years, you know that for some public agencies, those unfunded liabilities are
Huge.
Huge. I mean, yeah, they're a very, very significant financial issue. We don't have that. The OPEB benefits related to the district future commitments are in the basically low hundreds of thousands, 200,000 to 300,000.
I think the last valuation had it in the mid
Mid
500,
okay,
450,
so,
500.
yeah.
Usually it's in the summary, the special district review that this grand jury.
The grand jury, yeah, and that was
It's
the
in
most,
there.
right, exactly. This was the topic of not the most recent report, but the one prior to it that focused on.
Do we have a pile of money now that we're going to move to do?
This might be jumping ahead a little bit, but if we, so the action before the board is to consider, I think CalPERS is essentially saying we have one of three funds we can invest your monies in under this approach. And where we left this last month was that, again, generally it appeared the board was in favor of pursuing the setting up the trust. All of that had been taken care of. We were simply making a decision on which of the three investment alternatives CalPERS offers. Yeah. And Wendy, can you address Tom's question about?
Do we have a pot of money?
We do not have a segregated pot of money. We do have sufficient funds to establish it based on the recommended investment options.
How much would we put into initially start with a trust, and how much would we put in a year? About,
Approximately $112,000 to start it off, and then approximately $60,000 to $70,000 a year.
Those were the charts that were in last month.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
There are a whole lot of.
But we only have to get to about, I think it's about 500,000, somewhere in that range,
And then just kind of maintain
to
it.
be fully funded.
It would have to be by a certain amount of time.
Because this is our plan. We don't have to fund it at all.
Don't we get to choose?
No, we
want
don't,
to.
we don't have a legal requirement to fund this at all. It's considered part of the best practice, and it's certainly something that came under review by the grand jury.
So we have three strategies, and, you know, the general rule of thumb on investing is that you invest very conservatively if you need money short term. If you need it medium term, you might have a medium, you know, risk. And risk being defined as more equities versus fixed income. But this money we don't need for a long time,
For a long time.
a very long time. And so it's risky, it's more risk to us, I'm going to be on TV for saying this, investing conservatively. In other words, we have a chance of underfunding something or having to make up money, we're not getting enough money. So personally, if it's long-term, all of the financial people tell you, more equities. And so my recommendation, and the board, you can all have at it too, is that we go with the fund number one, or strategy number one. And by the way, this is the one that's been in existence the longest. And I suspect, you'll notice that they talk about assets under management, and it's all the same number. But the vast majority of assets under management are in this fund.
Oh, they're not dividing it up by strategy?
No, they haven't. They
Unless it just
follow the
happens.
same number.
Oh, the aggregate. It's
They
the
know
aggregate.
what we're doing.
Can I ask, Wendy, can you give us what you think?
Yeah, good.
Yes, I mean, I agree completely with Tom's assessment that the longer you have no need of the money, the higher risk actually gives you the greatest return, because in the short term, something that's high risk will look very volatile, and you could actually, if you need it at a low point, you've actually lost money. But in the long term, they're doing this at a much higher rate than the ones that are just floating along that are low risk. So strategy one is definitely a good choice. Strategy two would probably be fine too, based on a comparison of our valuation report, which was assuming a 4% annual return. Both of those appear to meet that.
Strategy three has 40% in fixed income, I guess, bonds. And
One of the things that you need to take into consideration with when each of these investment strategies were started is strategy one has the highest risk, and it went through 2008, 2009, when the market tanked.
that's true.
And so,
That explains the difference between 4.63 and 13.36. I was
right,
gonna say
and
that.
since inception, it took a big hit for a few years, and it has rebounded tremendously well. The other two have not experienced that type of market failure or downturn. So they look really good in comparison since inception, but it's a little false.
There's actual risk here?
So
We use our money?
you can lose money in stocks.
There is. I think they're always, I think.
This is basically a money market fund. It's a pooled investment.
Fun. I mean, we could stick our money,
But it's got $3 billion in it, right? Is that?
well, it isn't that,
Yes.
I don't think that, I think that I think they rate this, fund is rated, and it's AAA, like Standard & Poor's, and it's a AAA fund. But can it lose money? Yes, stocks go down. And if you needed the money in the next 4 years, I'd say 2
Go
or 3.
conservative.
2 or 3. But since we don't know, real long, got a real long horizon,
I am not the best financial person, but I'm getting exactly what you say. If we don't need the money, it doesn't seem, the odds are that we're not going to need the money right away, in which case the markets, like you said, are more volatile in the short term, but over the long term, it seems that it would be a much better investment
It
strategy.
would be well over 10 years, probably closer to
really.
15 or 20. Because we're doing, well, we only have 2 people that actually receive any benefits right now.
So we won't be on the
Only a
board, we
couple
won't
more
have to
than
answer
that.
for it.
Yeah, there you go.
And this was a recommendation of, I think the finance committee recommended this.
Yeah, but Peter's handout says one.
Okay. Board
Yeah,
action here?
do we need a motion, or do we
Yeah,
just direct
we
the
need a motion.
business
We should
manager?
have a motion.
Oh,
Understand?
It's
It's an investment.
Sure, I move that we direct the business manager to authorize CalPERS to invest in strategy 1 of the Oakland strategies.
A second?
Second.
Okay, good. Motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Monthly GM report.
I have just a few items, and I do want, it was my intent to return to doing written reports in the near future, but we've been moving pretty fast, and I'd like to, but I think it's helpful for me to do that for the board. But as far as verbal, just a couple of items of note. We are having our second meeting of the Collection Systems of the Future initiative tomorrow, which the district is a sponsor of. We're one of 10 agencies participating in that. So that second meeting is in Berkeley, and
That's the CASA.
yeah, it's the CASA-sponsored initiative to really look about 10 years out in the future and use that group to help evaluate and look at the needs of the industry. So pretty exciting opportunity. I missed the first meeting. I'll be attending the second meeting because I was just coming back from a long vacation. So John Clark and myself are primarily representing the district in that process.
Is that something we can go listen to? Is it open?
Oh, absolutely. It's open to, as far as I know, you'd be welcome if you're interested. The meeting is at 9:30 tomorrow in Berkeley.
I like all this.
And yeah, you might want to pace yourself.
I do endurance sports, so.
But it is, you would be welcome, I'm sure. It's a working group. It's not formal. It's not a board meeting or anything like that. There again, there's about 10 districts. From the north end to the south end of the bay, and just some really outstanding people we get to work with. So, other than that, we are shifting focus on a couple of things at the staff level. We're making a concerted effort to allocate engineering staff time towards the computerized maintenance management system implementation and get that moving forward a little more rapidly. We're still doing a lot of, I guess, sort of indirect outreach. I will be, and I apologize for the short notice, but I really I'd forgotten I had this commitment until about a week ago. I'll be talking to the Marin Conservation League tomorrow regarding the role of wastewater collection systems in regional water supply reliability. Just a great opportunity that came up.
Are you making a presentation for them?
Let me double check, but I think they meet at 4:30.
Oh,
And I've only been to one of their meetings. It was probably 8-9 months ago, just out of curiosity. And I bump into Dan Thomas fairly regularly. And basically many months ago we said, hey, why don't you come talk to us sometime? Or I think I may have asked to try and get that opportunity.
Great network.
I will send the board a copy of that presentation. It's going to be finished sometime between now and 3 o'clock tomorrow. But it's actually,
all about it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The other thing that I'm spending a lot of my time on is coordinating and planning staff activities related to the implementation of the lateral ordinance and the I&I reduction program. So the board, by approving those activities, you've really given us a really significant set of tools and resources. And now we are working hard to figure out how we're going to roll those out in a manageable way. We had I thought, a very positive first meeting with the Marin Association of Realtors, as agreed to form a working group to address some of the details on the new ordinance to make sure it has minimal impact on their business transactions, which I think I'm actually quite confident we're going to be very successful in doing that. There seems to be very good will and intent on all parties. Trying to think of anything else of real note, other than that, as you know, we're really just catching up. We've got the new budget adopted, so follow financial planning. Oh, thank you. Very important. I almost forgot.
We almost forgot.
So the COSTA conference, we had a consent calendar item for approval of attendance, but it raised a scheduling issue for the August board meeting. So I wanted to make sure that we got, if the board could consider some alternative dates. And I know Michael and Tom, you and I spoke about this informally the other day, and I believe we landed with the last week of August being an alternative that would work. So the obstacles we're working around is the week. First of all, the normal week, that third Wednesday would be, that is the COSTA conference. And then shortly after that, I think both of you had conflicts. So we wanted to make sure that we worked on a schedule for the August board meeting.
That was somewhere in writing in here.
Yeah, it's August 27th, I think.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It said to
We're
go
on
to
here.
the
We're
27th.
going to adjourn to the 27th.
I'm going to be on an airplane
It's
on my
actually-
way back
it's
from
on
Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
So
So Wednesday, August 27th.
we just wanted to make sure we.
You can't make August 27th?
August, I'll be on an airplane on the way back from D.C.
The 28th, I'm in Copenhagen.
Is there any possibility of doing it the Tuesday before?
The 26th, it would be fine, and the 25th.
No, I'm going to be in Washington, D.C.
Oh, you want to go the other way?
Yeah, the Tuesday.
When you're in
Copenhagen.
I'm out of town the weekend of the 8th, the weekend of the 8th, but I have not been in a long time.
You mean August 8th?
No, sorry, the week of August 18th, which is when we would normally have our meeting, so when I saw that, I thought.
But it's been canceled anyway, broadcast.
So
What about the 19th?
Almost.
The day, it's a Tuesday.
The Tuesday before
The
the
Tuesday.
CASA meeting.
Yeah.
Send us off and can have a bon voyage.
Well, some people need to be at the conference that Wednesday morning.
Yeah, it'll be.
Wednesday morning. Well, what about the 18th then? That's
I'm
Monday.
fine with any date.
I'm fine with the
We, staff can certainly work with the.
Can you make the 18th, Michael?
It's a Monday,
Monday.
before the CASA.
Correct.
Yeah, I cannot, I'll be out of town all week, but
But then your financial committee is supposed to meet a couple days before the meeting,
Yeah,
so that's
it's-
gonna
it
jam
does.
it.
No, the finance committee's going to meet,
You always meet, you usually 2 days before the board. It's how the packets are put together and the information.
It gets,
kind of-
yeah, it just gets to be a lot. Mary, is there any opportunity for you to monitor?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we did, so if we did Tuesday,
How many are we missing on Wednesday, the 27th?
excuse me,
Just Michael.
Just one.
One. Okay.
Michael, you're unavailable, DC.
could you call in?
You mean like from the airplane?
Oh,
He's actually.
I mean,
Oh, you would really make people mad.
and then,
So I think both the new board members are aware, I mean, you can participate remotely, we just have to properly.
I'm seriously on an airplane.
okay,
Let
well,
me look at
sometimes
my
we can't
flight.
get from
Maybe I
the-
can.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we do the best we can here.
Yeah.
So what,
The finance committee, you and I can schedule
We'll work
that
that out.
previous week.
Yeah.
So I would
Okay.
say, what was the last,
Monday, 18th?
which day?
was that the last
The 18th.
suggestion for that week?
Is that okay for everybody, the 18th?
Can we look at that?
Would you,
Yeah, I
I
could call
would
it.
love it.
I'm
or
just,
you call?
yeah, I'm just,
When are you gonna
See,
do your
we're still
financial
going to miss
committee?
somebody, it doesn't matter.
we can schedule that previous week.
I have to check my
Well, I just
calendar.
want to
to
let
help
you
my-
know how the financial committee flows.
Okay.
The staff has to put, it's
The
like,
package
it's a
together.
process and it's very streamlined. So I'm just
Wendy, what's your thoughts
letting
on
you know how it flows.
The
You
weekend?
can't do it like the
Tuesday,
day of, the
27th,
day,
we're doing this one
tell
first.
them.
If we move it up to the 18th, it's going to be very tough on staff for the
That's what I was
production
going
of
to
the
say.
agenda packet, which has to be done before the committee meeting.
Let's keep it on the
Because the committee
22nd.
usually reviews it.
Okay. Okay,
Sorry,
so
Marin.
stick to the 27th?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
If there's anything I can do to get on the flight earlier, I'll do it.
Okay, that would be
No
good.
cupcakes, right?
No cupcakes.
Um,
Tell the plane that.
And no, one other quick item I neglected to mention, we have been having discussions trying to figure out how to make some headway on the gray water, utilizing the grant funds. We had some very productive outreach, maybe about a month ago with Marin Municipal Water District and representatives from North Bay Conservation Corps, looking at the concept of a partnership where each party provides, something like whether it's technical expertise, implementation support, funding. So that discussion is in the very early stages, but the initial indications that it looks like it might be a good fit. In the interim, after that meeting, I've been doing some background research and updating my own understanding of where the state of gray water systems are right now, and it's kind of confirmed for me anyway that I think there's absolutely no reason that can't be a very successful program. The standards are getting clearer. The county Department of Public Health, actually she was also part of that discussion, one of the senior people up there. They have a tremendous amount of guidelines and information on their website already, and this is because there are now clear standards from the state. So stay tuned. We'll keep working on that, but I think there's real promise for putting those grant funds to some really great stuff to get a critical mass of demonstration projects out there that people start to understand. Gray water isn't some kind of fringe thing you do here and there. It's actually got real possibility if we could get some demonstration projects going. If you Google gray water right now in California, you'll see some really outstanding current systems in places like Santa Monica. San Francisco PUC's building is an outstanding example. So the role of what I think people have sort of seen as sort of a do-it-yourself home project is really changing, and I think our timing is really, really fortuitous to take a look at this. So that's about all I've got. I'll be shifting the written reports in the next year.
The other piece of that program we were talking about was waterless urinals.
Right.
So one waterless urinal saves approximately 40,000 gallons of water a year. That's 40,000 less gallons that are going to be flowing through our system.
Yep.
There's public buildings, schools, hospitals around that have urinals in the men's rooms, and you probably need to jump on that too. And it seems that if MMWD can handle a rebate program, we reimburse them for the rebate, and maybe the Conservation Corps actually puts the toilet in. I mean,
that's kind of we thought each party had something significant to contribute, just like you kind of explained to Frank. The roles that sort of need to be worked out. There could be, and I want to emphasize because this is all very preliminary, there could be a lead sort of centralized permitting role for county health, so that you're not having to get different regs and so on from every local building department. So the whole idea here is or at least one of these ideas is, we would love to identify like a large-scale project, like a building retrofit or something.
The hospital.
Where we could, you could really get some economy of scale and do this on the right, rather than doing. I mean, it's good to do residential for sure, but if we're going to get the most out of that initial investment, it would be nice to find some big projects.
but urinals, waterless
Oh,
urinals.
absolutely.
That's public
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
I just took a photo about it at Civic Center. They say they converted 23 urinals to waterless at the fairgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Saves 920,000 gallons a year. We can start reducing our flows of 1 million gallons here, 1 million gallons there by doing some of these. All of a sudden, it's
How many did they put in?
They put in 23 at
Just
the
23.
fairground. Just 23 saved 920,000 gallons of water.
Yeah.
College of Marin went around and did all theirs.
Waterless?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, okay.
A number of years ago.
Okay.
So the numbers that you're seeing, and these are really preliminary, but because this is so new, with established regulations and so forth, those were only done in 2009. You know, the numbers that are out there are in the 20 to 40% reduction in, well, actually reduction in water demand when these are being used, because they're used effectively for outdoor irrigation. They're really making a dent in water usage, but for our purposes, basically, the very simplest systems are what they call laundry to landscape, is the catchphrase. And the laundry to landscape is one that requires no permit, because it's strictly just what it sounds like. It's laundry discharge only to landscaping. Those don't even require a county permit at this point. The standards have been established. As long as you build to those standards, you can go do that. If you were to take a look at the stats on indoor water use and where it goes to, toilet flushing, laundry, etc., you start to see any significant level of those kinds of installations, and suddenly it looks like real water. I mean, it's real quantities. So it's a pretty exciting time. It's really early in all of this, but stay tuned. I think it's a really great opportunity for the region. And if the district can participate and support it and be out in front, would be just fabulous.
Great. Are there any studies or pieces of studies that analyze the actual effect on sewer lines with the reduction in water to help flush through the solids?
Right.
Or even
the short
the
answer
treatment
is,
plant,
yeah.
they're getting higher strength. Definitely.
Yeah. So there are some other issues here, and no question about it. These are things that basically would be pilot scale programs, you know, to develop information. So.
But they're really out there with the public.
Yeah.
They really are. Okay, anything else?
Quick question, Greg. For the new hospital, they're going to probably get ground in probably about a year and a half. Because I worked there and I saw the plans. They're in the planning phases, so do we need to step up to be part of that, or is there just going to be some regulations and standards that we don't have to? I mean, I just want to make sure, because this is a huge building.
Well, the first step would probably be to have some outreach. If we knew the right people to speak with about the status of the project, I would recommend a representative from MMWD, a representative from the district work together to do outreach to the appropriate person or persons that are dealing
Your
with.
friend Ann Thomas, because Kentfield Planning Advisory Board has been on that. Your friend Ann Thomas can probably tell you.
Well, I'll see her tomorrow.
There was a woman I know at the hospital who's on the planning. Okay, I just
Gonna be one of the lead.
Okay, any comments from board members? That's it, Pam?
Well, we're going to go to the next thing, which is.
Yeah. Okay, Greg, are you done?
Yes,
Are you done,
thank
Greg?
you.
So then we're moving on to 15 verbal report by board members. Let's start with Pamela.
Well, Finance Committee, but Peter was kind enough to do this summary, which is awesome. And I think every item, except for legal, but you have the handout on legal, right?
We printed it out. It was emailed to us.
Yeah.
I think it's A or it's B, A. Let's see.
Legal
April
went up a
8th.
little
It's
bit because of St. Quentin, am I right?
A little bit of San Quentin and a little bit of the EPA large landing application.
So we're averaging 25,000 a month.
A little less at
23
this
a week.
point. Probably in the low, probably averaging last 3 months, you'd be starting to look at somewhere around 20, 22.
And RFP did go out.
Correct.
Okay. And that's all I can say, really. There's nothing to report.
The
Oh,
draft-
wait, no, I'm sorry. On item 7, we reviewed the policies for the purchasing and inventory management. And we made some directions back to staff, so it's still in the works.
Yep.
Right? There's nothing really
It'll be
more
coming,
exciting
it'll
about
be
it.
coming back, yeah.
Okay,
Did you hear that? It's the purchasing policies.
right. We're going to go to the HR committee, and council needs to review some of it, so it's still in the process, it's still in a draft.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to be ready for another month or two.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've learned with these policies, is that we sort of had probably an overly narrow scope of upfront review, and it's pretty clear at this point we need to generally assume if we come up with a draft policy, it's gonna have to go to, we gotta really be up, making sure it goes through all the prior reviews before it comes to the board, so legal, personnel, if it's applicable, et cetera. And that's just been something we've learned trying to work through the policy.
And we decided, remember, that, in these long policies like this fraud policy, they're difficult to go through. And so if you could make an outline of key points,
Yeah.
section 7 does this, 8 does that.
Yeah, that was an excellent suggestion, I think, Tom. So we'll be following that. We'll be essentially, what I kind of call the Reader's Digest version of what is this really doing? Give it to us in essence, because as you guys pointed out during the Finance Committee discussion, very rightfully, you pick up the draft and it's, it might be 10 pages of stuff, and yeah, it's great to read it, but it would be nice to just know as a board member, give me the essence of what this policy is actually.
Then we can review.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that.
One thing I think we should add to that is, the reason why we're doing it is, was it recommended to us by our auditors? Was there a problem? If there was a problem, we're now fixing it? Or, because usually those are common questions, why are we doing this? And this comes up all the time, and a lot of them have been recommendations from our consultants.
Director Egger, do you have some comments?
Well, I did, on that Ross Valley Senator District financial policy, who's our purchasing agent? Is the manager?
The title, at this point, I'm not sure, does it exist, or is it?
No, the policy would
Oh,
establish.
the business manager
Yeah,
is
it
the
was
designated
created.
purchasing agent.
That's not how it is now. If that is
How would
something
it
in
be?
the policy, we would make it be the general manager. We could make
That's a
it
good
be someone
point.
else.
Well, see, the general manager reports to us, and everybody else works for the general manager. So my reaction to that is we should be appointing the general manager, and then he
can delegate.
can appoint. You see what as us, we're the policy guys, but he's under contract to us, and everybody else works for him. And so we would appoint him, and he figures out how to do it. Okay. That was one of my points.
The other
You
one-
caught it right off the bat.
And another point that we forgot to say, Tom, was that this information was sort of gathered here and there from what you said. We need full
Reviewing different
information,
policies.
so we're going to look at some other agencies
Right.
just to compare, to make sure we've kind of reviewed it.
It was really complicated.
It was.
We were kind of swimming with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we realize it's going to take, it's definitely not ready for prime time yet. We're going to be bringing back, again, more of a summarized, tell us what this really is. We're going to show you at least 2 of the sample policies that we drew from, so you can have a sense. And basically also do, again, legal and other reviews before it comes back to the board.
Okay.
So
Just one more, the grand jury report, we have to respond to it. When are
Oh,
we going to do that?
yeah, thanks. Okay, so we have it, staff's conducting the review. I think from my read of it, our response is not going to be real exhaustive. It does mention a few things about Ross Valley. Let me be more specific. At the August board meeting, you'll have a draft, you'll have a staff report that includes a draft response to it.
Okay.
And you'll get an opportunity, obviously, as we did last time, to review and finalize, provide input to it. I forget the deadline, but it's fairly generous this time.
90 days.
I believe it's sometime in September.
Yeah, so if we address this at the August board meeting, we should be fine. I have done my first read through it. I actually don't consider it all that bad, quote, unquote, for what it's worth. It has a number of items we can address quite constructively in our responses too. And I was one of the people that was interviewed, by the grand jury, so I felt that, for what it's worth, my own opinion, I think they actually did a pretty decent job of capturing a lot of the issues. So we'll have a proposed response to it.
They included us on a bunch of general items too.
They did.
Did you notice
Yeah,
that?
I did, yeah.
There was 2
Yeah.
or 3
Some was
that were
pretty positive.
specific.
Yeah, actually interesting. So if you didn't notice, the second, what they call part 2, is those districts with inadequate sanitary sewer management plan. We are not in there at all.
Yeah,
Which is great. And
So we're on the cutting edge all of a sudden.
Yeah,
which is
so it's
fantastic.
good.
Three things jumped out at me. One, we were high on fines, we were high on legal, and we were really low on the pension.
Right, unfunded liability.
You know,
Exactly.
and we were also extremely good on all the study requirements. It seemed to me we had everyone covered, you know, what
Response
studies.
plans, management plans, all of,
But
that's,
those other things jumped out.
I think that's a real good indication of some of the progress that districts made in the last several years, so.
By the way, CMSA's got a great brochure out about what not to put down the toilet. I'll drop it off to you or get one from Jason. You know, and I think somehow we've got to kind of,
That might be our outreach.
Yeah,
Newsletter, what not to do.
sure,
Something
that's what I'm
like that.
thinking.
Yep.
Sure, okay, that's all.
Okay, so I just want to report very quickly. I attended the North Bay Watershed Association, and Michael was there too. I'm not going to say too much, my notes are pretty good. Basically, with the drought, I guess there's been a sort of a chronic drought, but now it's really becoming, really peaking. So, because of the drought, there's going to be an increase in the pharmaceuticals, the algae bloom, and the saltwater intrusion, which will ultimately affect us because of our pipes that are going to probably be within that saltwater intrusion. And I didn't realize that the Sacramento River supplies 80% to agriculture. That was one of the things.
All water in California.
Unbelievable.
Ag uses 80 to 85% of the water.
So that was kind of the biggest thing that sort of hit me was the drought and how it's going to affect everything, native plants, fish, and so that's all.
I'll quickly mention that we did have all 5 board members and our 2 board members elect were at a meeting. We had a special meeting and the supervisor from Sonoma County, Mike McGuire was there, and he will be the next state senator, and he's going to be very supportive, I think, of the kinds of issues that we're dealing with all the time. And he's got a good handle on it, because he was on the Healdsburg City Council, and they had their own sewer system. The county up there, and he dealt with sewer issues too. So I think it'll be very advantageous for us.
I was very impressed with the amount of information we gave him in a minimum amount of time. We loaded him up.
He's never coming
He was
back.
kind of swimming. So that was an excellent meeting.
Well, which reminds me, I saw him at the 4th of July Larkspur Parade. He was out campaigning, and he came up and gave me a big hug and told me how much he liked the meeting. And Jared Huffman and Mark Levine called out to me from their cars, like, Mary, how's it going? How's it going? So we have a remarkably high profile with our state elected and congressional representatives. We did not have an HR committee meeting this month, so I don't have anything to report on that count.
I'm just in awe of what you guys have accomplished over the past 2 years from, I think staff called it the trouble period beforehand. 2 years is the grand, everything I read and what everybody's saying, I'm hearing a lot. I'm really looking forward to doing this.
So pace yourself. Pace yourself. You driving to Berkeley tomorrow?
I just rode my bike to LA. I can do this.
Well, I would like to report that Greg did an introduction to Michael and I, which was very useful for getting our feet wet on all the information the board has. It's extensive. And then I'm very impressed with the LAFCO, report that they did. It's really quite good. And if you get a chance, really go over it. I think it's an information item we might stick in our binders. And then I'd like to thank the board members. I think we had a good meeting tonight, and I'm really looking forward to this. And I think we made progress here. And I'm for getting the word out. We've had a lot of bad publicity. I think we've got to turn it around. I would like to have a closed session legal at our next meeting. We've got to get me up to Smith on
Sure.
these legal stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, and Michael too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with Pamela, I'm not liking usual rules.
Yeah, we'll be doing maybe kind of two stages to that. And we were going to be getting in touch with you guys. So first would be just to give you kind of the sit down, direct with probably Julie, probably Christian, and just go through the active matters before the district, give you background, answer questions, and so on, so you have a chance to really get up to date. And then, and obviously, please provide direction if you'd like to do otherwise. We can schedule, obviously, the closed session itself for any current matters, or just to have you have the opportunity to talk as a group about current matters now that the new board is seated. So I think clearly at this point, we're anticipating a closed session for the August board meeting. Prior to that, again, you two will receive just a sit-down inundation. It's quite a lot of information. Some of these matters have a lot of history. They're somewhat complicated, so I think you'll benefit greatly if you have that background before you actually sit in your first closed session with the current matters. So those are the steps we're taking to kind of bring you up to speed.
And then you should mention that we got, our 5th annual Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. Is it your 5th one?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, so
This is by the GFOA, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yep. And
It says it somewhere, yeah, right here.
yeah, we apply for it every year. Wendy and Julie head up that effort, and it is, in essence, sort of the industry stamp of approval of the quality of your reporting. It doesn't mean you might not be in financial straits, because obviously organizations.
As long as you report it.
But it is important to have high-quality financial reporting, and this is sort of that independent, good housekeeping seal of approval
And it's
for
a
it.
peer review too.
Yeah, so we think it's a nice achievement every year, and hopefully the board is finding the internal reporting processes, the monthly reports, the budget document format, the audit, all the things that finance is producing, that those documents internally are also informative and well-written, or they communicate well to your needs. This is an external seal of approval, but we first and foremost want to make sure we're meeting your guys' needs on the financials. So,
Have they rescheduled you in Sacramento yet?
I got an email about an hour before this board meeting, Frank. It's mid-August now. Yeah, thanks for.
What are you talking about?
The Joint Legislative Advisory Audit Committee, tentatively mid-August, and I'll keep the board up to date. That's the latest from the staff.
Oh, on that. Okay.
There is one for budgets too, isn't there? Isn't there an award for budgets?
There's an award for budgets, and then there's also usually for the popular annual financial report, which is the summarized version. All kinds of things.
Pam, do you have a future agenda item?
I do. I was just waiting.
Okay, future agenda.
To establish a public education outreach standing committee.
I think that's a good idea. That'll be on our.
And I'll send you an outline, Michael, on some ideas. And that'll be for the next meeting.
We can bring that, we would like that in August, it's certainly doable.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, very good.
See, the award we would like to get within my term is Collection System of the Year by CB. That would be
Oh, did you think of, I know we've talked about the student to help you with the lateral.
Your presidency term or your elected term?
my
Okay. Because I was going to say, wow.
That's going to be an ambitious year.
Oh, that we can do. You know how, we've come a long way with.
4 years. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you, board members. That was a good meeting.
Thank you. That's right.